He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Tuesday and every Friday from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. And at noontime, the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu, will be here for another edition of Ask the Mayor, when you can ask her questions via 877-301-8970. We'll ask her some questions, too.
Or you can stand right over there and talk to one of our colleagues and ask her a question face-to-face. And speaking of Ask Thee, on Friday, the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, joins us also at the library for an hour of Ask the Attorney General. So another week, more felony indictments of Donald Trump, this time including his associates, all courtesy of Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis in Georgia. We'll open the phone and text lines in a couple of minutes to get your take on the latest legal peril for the former president. But first, we're joined on Zoom by retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. Judge Gertner is a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
Hello, Judge Gertner. Thank you so much for being with us again. So, when I think of RICO indictments, you think usually of the mob. So how did this wind up being a RICO indictment down in Georgia?
Well, RICO is racketeering influenced, or the racketeering enterprise, which is after a racketeering enterprise. It has been applied. It started with the mob, and that was the rationale. You couldn't get mobsters sometimes for participating, alleged mobsters for participating in this murder or that murder. And the conspiracy laws, when you conspire to commit murder, let's say, you still have to share, you have to show that you had an intent to participate in a conspiracy with that goal. Racketeering enabled a lower level of proof, essentially, a lower level of enabled a much wider indictment. So you had to show that you knowingly participated in a racketeering enterprise, which could be a loosely defined group intended to, implement illegal purposes. And you had to participate in specific overt acts, which could be specific crimes. Didn't have to be the murder, as I'm describing, could be something else. So it was. The standard of proof is still beyond a reasonable doubt, but what you need to prove is a much more diffuse, much more general kind of crime. It then went from looking at the mob and to being applied to gangs, street gangs. It's been used on the civil side with a wide variety of cases. It's a tool that we should be troubled by in many circumstances. I was as a judge. Even if your people are cheering it on in this circumstance.
Are you troubled by it here? I mean, I know you're no fan of Trump's, but as a judge and former defense lawyer, are you troubled by it here?
A little bit, Jim. I mean, what we see is the next round. Let's assume Trump is, prosecuted. Let's say Trump is defeated. Will we then risk a racketeering enterprise allegation against a political candidate in the future? There are certainly risks here. You can't tell this story without looking at the risks. Now, unlike some, Professor Goldsmith wrote this in the New York Times a couple of days ago. Troubled by bringing these charges against Trump. This was before the state indictment, and he was troubled because of the dislocation in the country, because of what the political implications are. So you have to balance. On the one hand, this is a troubling tool, and it's a troubling situation when you go after a political figure. On the other hand, if that political figure has committed real crimes, you have to. And that's the situation we're in.
Judge Gertner, the other thing I was wondering about, people who are not fans of the former president were kind of happy that this was going to be taking place in state court for a couple of reasons. One is because it's much more likely to be on television than in the federal court, so people can see it. But the second thing is that there's not only a mandatory minimum of 5 years in this case, but he would not be able to pardon himself were he to win the election in 2024 as he could in a federal case. But Trump's lawyers are apparently asking, according to some reports, that this case be transferred from the state courts to the federal courts. Is that a possibility, and why would that happen?
So I'm recovering from COVID, and last night I stayed up to do some research. I'm a total lunatic, right? Because that is an interesting question. So there's a statute that enables removal from a state court, a criminal prosecution, or even a civil prosecution from federal court into state court. It came about when federal revenue officers were being, prosecuted in states that didn't want federal revenue officers to be, collecting taxes. It's had its genesis of sort of harassment of federal officers.
Okay.
The notion is that were these acts done, quote, under color of law. This was tried in the Alvin Bragg New York case, and the federal where they tried to remove out the Stormy Daniels allegations in federal court, and the judge said, hey, this is not under color of law. He was paying off a porn star. It had nothing to do with under color of law. I think the same argument, not the same argument, a similar argument could be made here. They will try to say that what Trump and his associates were doing were part and parcel of their official responsibilities. I think that's actually a hard argument to make, given the nature of the accusations. Hacking into voting systems, false electors, that seems really hard to map onto under color of law. But we are in uncharted territories. I think it's not likely to succeed, but it could.
But very quickly, if it is transferred to federal court, state law will still govern. I don't mean procedurally, but substantively, in terms of what Marjorie said, the mandatory minimums, the parole, okay, fine. So,
or the pardoning of yourself.
Right, exactly.
The pardoning, right.
That won't work in this case.
Even if there's a federal trial.
Okay.
So,
he can be pardoned, but Georgia requires a commission.
Okay.
Well, also, Georgia requires you serve 5 years.
Yes,
which is another thing which I didn't know about till the other day. She says, Fonnie Willis said last night, by the way, you were recovering from COVID. We're up all night. I didn't have COVID recently. I was asleep by 8:30. So just to show the different kind of lives we lead, Judge Gardner. So
I'm considerably older than you are.
So I understand. Yes, I wish. What's my point? Oh. She said she wants a trial. Willis says she wants a trial within 6 months. She has 19 defendants. She said last night she wants to try all 19 together. There's no way in hell that she's going to get the go-ahead of Jack Smith, and you're shaking an agreement. So how is that decided? She said the other day if she was standing next to Jack Smith, Willis said this, she wouldn't even recognize him. I was shocked, considering there's so much overlap, that they hadn't talked to each other. What happens when they do talk to each other, when Willis says, I'm not deferring to you, Special Counsel Smith? Who determines what?
Well, the judges in each case will determine the pacing of the case. And the Fannie Willis made an interesting decision, which was the opposite of Jack Smith's decision.
Yes.
She made a decision to include in this indictment, partly because it was a RICO charge, a very elaborate narrative of misconduct and multiple defendants. Smith obviously made the choice to do a much more spare indictment so that it could get to trial more quickly.
Understood.
And also so that some of the likely defenses, if he had added, if it had been Trump's role in the January 6 events directly, inciting a riot, that would have been wrapped up in litigation for years. So she's made the opposite choice, but having made that choice with 19 defendants and this elaborate scheme, I don't see how it goes to trial in 6 months. But a judge could make that decision, but you'd want a judge to be attentive to the rights of the defendants in this case. So I don't see how, practically speaking, her case could jump ahead of Jack Smith's case.
So last question on the same subject. Let's assume prosecutors, judges, whoever talks to each other. And as I said a minute ago, they don't agree. Willis and whoever the judge is said, we want to go first. Smith and Chutkan say, we want to go first. There's no body to...
There's no body to
Clarence Thomas, when he's on a private jet, could decide. But other than that, how do you decide that kind of issue?
Each of the judges would be deciding that issue, and each of the judges would be deciding that issue. And the likelihood, though, is because the federal one came first and is simpler.
I see.
That a judge would, that would be a different schedule than the state charges that are more complicated and have many more defendants.
Well,
even if they don't coordinate, the likelihood is that the Smith charges would go first.
Understood.
Well, that's the other thing I wonder about. Are we going to have 19 opening arguments, 19 closing arguments, 19 attorneys, or is it 18 or 19?
There are 19 defendants.
19.
Yeah, I mean, this could go on for years.
The judge who's in charge of the case, many of us presided over multiple defendant cases, and you just break up the cases. You break up the cases so that, you're not trying all 19 at once. The complexities of that, in terms of the admissibility of statements that may be admissible against one but not against another, oftentimes leads to breaking this up. And that's my assumption. In addition, by the time you get to trial, that many will have, or
point.
some at least, will have cooperated.
Yes, pled
They'll
guilty.
be dropping out. So,
Okay.
Well, that actually leads to a question I was going to ignore. Actually, I wasn't going to, I just forgot it, but now I've remembered it. So everybody is asking, why do we not hear about Mark Meadows in the Jack Smith case? He's apparently not an unindicted co-conspirator. He doesn't appear to be number 6, is the only one we don't know. And the conventional wisdom, I think you subscribe to this, I don't know, is because he's flipped on Trump, but he's a defendant in Georgia. That could also screw up Jack Smith, could it not, Judge Gertner?
Yeah, think about the parallel to the Hunter Biden case for a moment. Hunter Biden's plea apparently foundered on the fact that the plea wasn't resolving all charges, and that the government still wanted to investigate, even though was pleading to tax and gun charges. Likewise, if there were, and we're speculating, even if there was an agreement with Mark Meadows to cooperate in the Jack Smith case to wrap up whatever federal charges there are, that agreement didn't cover state charges. And so that has enabled a state prosecution. I imagine there's some concern in Washington now about whether, it depends on the language of the plea agreement, whether this runs the risk of upending a plea agreement. But that's the problem here. He did, in order to have a plea agreement that would have wrapped up everything, Fannie Willis would have had to have signed on to any cooperation agreement with Jack Smith, and that apparently didn't happen.
Judge Gertner, enjoy your nap. It's good to see you.
Yeah,
are you kidding?
Huh?
I hope
Who goes to sleep at 8:30 that isn't a 12-year-old?
Yeah, I know. Well, yes, many of us have asked that question. But I hope you feel better recovering from COVID, Judge Gertner, and thank you very much for being with us. That was retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, who's kind enough to be with us, even though she is recovering from COVID. She's a senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a BPR contributor. You notice you're hearing more and more people getting COVID again now?
I do.
It's really upsetting. Anyway, coming up, we're going to open the lines to get your thoughts on this 4th indictment of a former president. I'm with a lot of other people, Jim. I mean, it's like another day, another indictment. It just kind of goes on and on and on.
Not me.
This vast criminal enterprise that seems to have been operating out of Washington, D.C. We're going to take your thoughts on this, 877-301-8970. You can call or text us at that number. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor will join us in about 45 minutes in person here. 4 indictments, 4 states this year alone. Trump faces racketeering charges for a conspiracy to subvert the will of voters in a new indictment or set of indictments out of Georgia. You recall his self-described, quote, perfect call to Georgia election officials.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have. So tell me, Brad, what are we going to do? We won the election, and it's not fair to take it away from us like this.
Obviously, Brad is Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, who, by the way, is a Republican who voted for Trump. So the phone and text lines are open, 877-301-8970. We'd like to hear your perfect call. This man, as of right now, remains the front runner by a lot, the likely Republican nominee for president, been charged with joining, quote, a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of an election so he would remain in power. As Marjorie said, there's a mandatory minimum. These state charges would be unpardonable by a president. So even if he does make his way into the White House again, he can't make this all disappear. By the way, I did the math this morning. Trump faces 91 criminal charges in 4 jurisdictions, Marjorie: Georgia, Florida, New York, and D.C. Any one of them could put him in jail for years. Are you rejoicing, saying justice finally seems possible? Or has this almost become so routine at this point? I hate even saying this, sort of nothing to see here, carry on with your August plans. 877-301-8970.
Well, you know, Peter Baker had a great piece in the New York Times today, August 15th, saying exactly that this has become, unfortunately, kind of almost a routine. Another day, another indictment, another norm smashed by Donald Trump. White noise for voters. Can't tell the difference between Georgia and Jack Smith because it all blurs together in one long news cycle of Trump's in trouble, and the Trump enterprise is turned into a crime enterprise. His niece, who wrote a very fascinating book about Donald Trump's life at home as a child and with his parents growing up, says that really that the president has been involved in the criminal enterprise since the 1970s. So this is nothing new. But I think it is almost like you almost wish this had waited until after Labor Day. Everybody's back in the back to school.
You gotta be kidding.
Well, the dog days of August are a tough time to get people to pay attention to things. You know,
I think almost every day. The number's 877-301-8970. I think almost every day. Not almost every day, and quite often during the day, about your repeated position, he can't win an election. And I say to myself, the issue for me, well, again, the issue to
unless
me,
a third-party person takes away a lot.
is not just whether he wins an election. As things currently stand, a guy who is credibly accused in 4 jurisdictions of trying to plan a coup to overturn the democracy, a democratic election, is the runaway frontrunner for the nomination of a major party in America. I mean, I can't get over it. I mean, it's unbelievable. And by the way, I did go to bed at 8:30 last night, and I did wake up, and I heard Willis, and I heard everything on the radio late last night. I'm saying to myself, this is just unbelievable, and there's no evidence. There's an inverse proportion. The more he's indicted, the better he does, and the greater his lead is in the Republican Party. It's just unbelievable.
I told you this before the show. I heard John Meacham, the historian, on some show this morning, and I'm a big fan of his.
What did he say? He writes a lot of Biden speeches. Do you know that?
He writes a lot. He's a Biden, yep. And he's written a lot of great books about history books about the country. And one of the things he said was, we have to remember that even after Joseph McCarthy was disgraced during the McCarthy hearings back in the 50s, when people were hauled out of their homes and brought before the Un-American Committee, whatever they called it back then.
House Un-American Activities.
Yeah, and accused people of being communists and their lives were ruined. Even after he was disgraced, 30-some% of the country was still with him. So the MAGA base is what, 35, 37?
Yeah.
So he didn't find that to be all that bizarre, considering that we have a history. You go back to the Scopes trial when, we couldn't talk about evolution because now that was a while ago, obviously. But that there's a group of people that will believe these things in this country. It's not that unusual. What he thought was unusual was the other 15%, the people that still are not in the MAGA thing. They're not necessarily totally taken by this guy.
How about women in the MAGA thing who I assume may have heard somewhere that a jury in New York City found him liable for sexual abuse. Not to mention the other 24 women.
I think the big thing that's going to hurt him in this election is abortion.
I know you do.
And we'll see. I think that's underestimated. You know that millions of women have had abortions. Millions of women know people who've had abortions. I don't think that they think of themselves as criminals. And Donald Trump is against abortion. So I think that's going to hurt him. Phil in Beverly.
Hi,
Thank
Phil.
you for calling.
Welcome. Hello.
Hi. Maybe today you can get some insight from your listeners. The Georgia State Legislature passed legislation that Kemp signed that says that in October, Kemp has the right to pull Fani Willis off the job as the prosecutor in this particular case. So does he have the nerve in October to do that? Because,
I don't know about that.
That's sort of analogous to what we discussed that DeSantis has done to 2 prosecutors, including one in Orlando. We're going to check into that. I don't know that he has the power. I believe that you believe so. We'll check it out now.
Even if he did, I mean, you still have other prosecutors in the office. Is he going to wipe out the
Phil's
entire
point
office?
He replaces Willis with somebody.
And they drop the case?
But, I just realized, Phil, Kemp has been attacked viciously by Trump since he was not willing to participate in the overturning of the Georgia vote. So the more I think about it, even if you're right, I don't think it's something to worry about. Phil, thank you for the call, though.
Let's play a little sound of Fani Willis, actually. Here she is in the wee hours announcing the indictment against former President Donald Trump.
The indictment includes 41 felony counts and is 97 pages long. Every individual charged in the indictment is charged with 1 count of violating Georgia's Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act through participation in a criminal enterprise in Fulton County, Georgia, and elsewhere to accomplish the illegal goal of allowing Donald J. Trump to seize the presidential term of office.
I assume people, even if you weren't up last night, you know that also indicted is Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, the lawyer, Kenneth Cheeseborough,
Sidney Powell for stealing data from voting systems.
I mean, it is like a lit. I know this has been written a million times, so it's not an original thought. Can you imagine anybody dumb enough to go to work for Donald Trump? Now, is there anybody he either doesn't abandon or who doesn't get indicted? One of the two things?
Somebody called him a professional defendant today. I kind of like that.
That's a good line.
That's what he's become. And it's interesting in his campaign, there's no talk of inflation or Ukraine.
There's no talk about what he's going to do as president again.
It's just about the fake election and how he's a victim.
And they eat it up.
Henry from Concord, thank you for calling.
Hello, Henry.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to mention something that I don't think I've seen really any discussion of, which is what if Trump had prevailed and managed to seize the presidency?
Yeah.
There would be protests all over the country, and the Trump people discussed how they would handle that. I saw in one place that they mentioned that they would use the Insurrection Act, which is to say that they would be bringing the military out to quell protests or what could potentially become riots if Trump was trying to keep the presidency.
Yeah, Henry, I would like to hope that you were 100% right about the first half of that if he had succeeded, Mike Pence had declared him the winner, picking the fake electors or even sent it back to the legislatures in those, 7 states, there'd be massive protests. I'm not sure that this meek American public would do that. I hope you're right. Henry, thank you very much for the call. What are you laughing about?
One of the texters says, book 'em, Dano. That was that TV show.
What was that, Hawaii?
I don't know. It was Hawaii. Yeah, thank you, Hawaii 5-0. Oh, poor Hawaii. Oh, my God. 877-301-8970. I think this must be a election denier person. This is Pete in New Hampshire. Wants to know if we're familiar with the Michigan State Police reported tens of thousands of absentee ballots dropped off by one person containing invalid information, and the investigation uncovered a ring of people
did you
during
read that story? I did last night. Santa Claus dropped them off, Pete, or whoever. 877-301-8970. Getting back
These
to
were
what
all
Henry
taken to
said
court, by the way,
about mass demonstrations, you're the problem.
Who, me?
You.
Oh, okay.
I am absolutely levitating over reading this stuff this morning. And I know you're joking when you're saying, couldn't it wait till after Labor Day? But there is a matter of factness to this now that is really frightening. I mean, this is...
Again, this is one of the things that's... I guess people are okay with a man who's defrauded all these students their hard-earned money to go to college, Trump University. He had to pay a $25 million fine. As you said, people are okay with someone who now basically has been civilly charged guilty with rape, even though the laws are different in New York. It's a little bit different. It would have been rape in Massachusetts. They're okay with that. They're okay with someone who didn't pay their contractors, didn't pay their lawyers, all these things.
Didn't pay his taxes.
Didn't pay his taxes.
And tried to overthrow the government of the United States of America.
So I think it's just a thing born out of kind of resentment of people like us, that the terrible liberals. I think that must be part of it. I don't know. It does seem odd that he becomes your hero, but obviously to millions of people, he's a hero. I don't get it, but there it is. Brian in New Bedford, thank you for calling.
Hi, Brian.
Well, as you're saying, how can I just don't think he can get convicted.
Why?
I don't think a jury would, as you were saying, 3 out of 10 are totally loyal to him. Even though the charges should be brought and all that. That's my big fear. I would be very surprised if he is found guilty.
Well, if he is not found guilty, meaning if there's even one juror, I assume everybody knows at a criminal trial you need unanimity of the jurors. Can you imagine if there's a hung jury about what happens in this country? I worry about it too, Brian, because you only need one holdout. You only need one person to lie or misrepresent during the questioning of the jurors by the judge in the federal trial. It's a scary proposition, and a lot of people have much more expertise than I say some of the legal arguments are rather novel in all these cases.
Yep.
And it makes people like you and me nervous. And
a lot of people are
Brian,
making much hay over where the trials are going to be held. The Mar-a-Lago is going to be a much more sympathetic jury pool, you would think, than Washington, D.C., where most of Washington, D.C. is Democratic. Georgia, that's a very, very, Fulton County is very, very Democratic. Many of the people that were at the courthouse last night were African Americans. A lot of people think Donald Trump is a racist.
you need one vote. You need one juror.
They need one vote. But, there's something to me... sort of poetic justice of a black woman holding his feet to the fire in Georgia and holding his feet to the fire in New York State.
Because she's a racist. Do you hear Trump?
Well,
they're all racist. Every black prosecutor and every black judge who's involved with them are all racist.
Well, it would be a beautiful thing if both she and Letitia James up in New York State prevail. That would make me very happy. Dave on Cape Cod, thank you very much for calling.
James is civil case.
The civil case, absolutely.
Civil case, yeah. Dave in the Cape, hey.
Jim, hi guys. You guys, Jim, you wanted to know why Trump would still be supported by, despite the fact that you say he's credibly charged. His supporters don't think he's credibly charged.
Right.
They think it's a witch hunt. They don't think he did anything wrong. And by the way, he's Trump. And Marjorie, you're right. That's one of the things that Trump's greatest allure is because he has no problem saying stupid stuff to everybody about stupid stuff. They love doing that stuff.
Yeah.
They love hearing it. That's what they want to hear.
Dave, by the way, I agree with you in part, but not totally. I don't believe every one of them thinks he's done nothing wrong. I think a decent percentage thinks he's done something very wrong, but they don't give a damn because he's their guy. I don't know if you saw that poll we talked about a lot a couple of weeks ago. What was it, New York Times Siena poll, where only 5% of Republicans thought he was credibly charged in that credibly accused of serious federal offenses. I don't know if you saw the sub-piece of that poll. In the poll by the New York Times and Siena, 300 of the Republicans who were surveyed were identified as MAGA Republicans, meaning the really hardcore. Of the 300, do you know how many of them said in the poll that Trump had committed any serious federal crimes, Dave?
I didn't see the article, so I'm going to guess 25%.
Zero. Not 1 out of 300. And I find it hard to believe if you're standing up, meaning upright, that 300 out of 300 could have that point of view. I don't have any proof. You may be right. But my attitude is, yeah, sure, he's guilty, but he's sticking it to the man, and he's our guy. Dave, thanks for the call.
Also, as we said,
Would you agree with Dave that everybody every single Republican who stayed with him, which is practically 100% of them, think he did nothing wrong, or they know he did something wrong, but it doesn't matter?
Well, I think the politicians know he did something wrong, but they're staying with him because they think they need his people in their election.
How about the rank and file Republican voter?
No, was he the lieutenant governor? I think he was the lieutenant governor of Georgia, who's a Republican, who was on television last night saying this is going to sink the Republican Party.
Yeah.
That there's only so many indictments people can take, even though it seems that we're adjusting quite well to the fourth one. But at some point, it becomes. We're going to have 5 trials between now and May.
6.
Is it 6? Okay, 6 trials between now and May. That's a lot.
Well, they're not going to be now in May. They're scheduled, but obviously he can't be in 2 different courtrooms at the same time.
Some of them are going to start, and I think it's a bad look in general. I don't think, like I said before, you get that MAGA base, you got another 10 or 15%, but I don't think that's.
What do you mean a bad look?
I think it's a bad look to be the professional defendant.
Yeah, but if it's a bad look to a point, let's assume there's no camera in the courtroom. It's not Georgia. He comes out of the courtroom after we have second and third hand reports of what was said and says, witch hunt, all lies, all racist, and everybody cheers. He's our guy. It's an alternative. I mean, it's Kellyanne Conway's alternative facts. I mean, he is the king of alternative facts. So I worry without a camera that the things you hope are going to happen will. Molly, you're in West Newbury. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Yes, I'm not sure if this was covered already. I apologize if I missed it. But this should be near and dear to your heart. Cameras are allowed in Fani Willis's courtroom.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not mandatory, but the judge can allow them in the courtroom. Yeah, that's huge. And I don't know if you heard, but actually we should play that sound. Here's Fulton. Don't go away, Molly. Here's the Fulton County Sheriff, Pat Labatt, on whether Trump will have his mugshot taken when he appears for his arraignment. Here it is.
We are following our normal practices. And so it doesn't matter your status. We have mugshots ready for you.
We'll have mugshots ready for you. So the reason I played that, Molly, is my sense that you're right, that they're not going to make an exception to what is generally the rule, namely that there are cameras allowed in those courtrooms. I hope you're right. And by the way, Molly, I think that would change everything. The unfortunate part, as we discussed with Judge Gertner, is with 19 defendants, that case is probably not even going to be tried until after the election. So it's the one where there are no cameras. For example, the situation in Washington, which is likely to happen first. Molly, thank you for the call.
Jane from Chelsea is saying that we should all be reading both this latest indictment from Georgia, which I haven't read yet. It's 98 pages long. It's going to take me a while to get through that. But I did read the other one from January 6th, which is a brisk 45 pages.
It is
and really well done. So when you see it all written like that, you think, oh, my God.
In layperson's language, too. I mean, I assume Smith's, whoever in his office, or whoever, I assume multiple people drafted this thing, drafted it so that normal people could actually understand what Trump was being charged with. 877-301-89. I'm sorry, but it's not just you. I don't get that people are worked into a frenzy like I am about this. It really is. What's the word Peter Baker uses? It's routine.
Yeah, routine.
Become routinized. It's
That's
sort
right.
of another
day,
set
another
of indictments for a former president of the United States who's the front runner to be the nominee of one of the 2 major parties.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of it, that people knew who he was the first time around and elected him anyway. There were all these reports of his lying about things, and you just repeat the lie, and people believe it. There's a reason con men are so successful. He's a very successful con man. People fall for con men all the time.
Let me ask you something. Let's assume we're right about Mark Meadows, his former chief of staff, and the reason he's not an unindicted co-conspirator in the Jack Smith case is because he's flipped already. When big-time Trump supporters see former loyalists of Donald Trump turn on him, is their position going to be, they only turned on him to save their own behind, and we don't believe them
Well, if you watched the January 6th committee,
that's a very good point.
everybody was a Trump loyalist. These are people who were the closest to him, his lawyers, his aides, that young woman that worked in his office who was, came in with stars in her eyes and came out very courageous. That she stood up to the powers that be. But the guy that had 10 kids, what was his name? The lawyer that finally talked about his malfeasance in the office.
Which one? You mean Cipollone, the
Cipollone.
chief counsel?
Cipollone.
He has 10 kids?
He has 10 kids.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
How's he have time to
Had
give
double
counsel
check
to
that.
the president?
Well, he's a good Catholic, Jim. The good Catholics don't believe in birth control.
Derek in New Hampshire, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about the indictments handed down in the middle of the night last night in Georgia. Hi.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Yep.
I think a lot of the reason why this seems old hat now is because, indictments don't really release new information. We've been beating this, drum for 2.5 years now.
That's a good point.
The New York indictment, had a big uptick, and I think because people were anticipatory of, some January 6th type stuff happening again. But since then, and even on the Republican side, he gets the same bumps that he got from the second indictment as he has from the, third and fourth. So, I think losing our minds over everything that the GOP does or doesn't do is just totally counterproductive to how to work towards solving any of this. The more emotional we are, the less effective we're going to be.
You were obviously much more grown up than I. So how are we going to work towards whatever that place is that we'd all like to be in rather than this? Do you have a plan?
I think that some objectivity and rationality and not, hating on other people that have been duped by Fox or whoever else. Yes, there's a significant percentage of people that are unreachable, but I don't think that's the vast majority of Americans on the right.
Uh-huh.
And, there's people on the left that are just as, looking for virtue signaling and are, very, difficult to deal with and are sort of hemmed into their corner as well. I just think that, seeing other people as people and recognizing that they have opinions and perspectives and trying to, this whole, we need to secede and we can't get along with these people, it's just counterproductive. We're all Americans, and I'm not saying you need to placate other people, but I think, being obstinate to their existence is not helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I agree. I think almost everything you said is valuable. The only place where I'd take a totally different direction is your comparison to, I don't know if you use the word extreme Democrats. Whatever it is they're advocating or supporting is not even in the same planet as those who continue to support with a passion a guy who tried to overthrow the government of the United States. Other than that, you're very thoughtful, and we appreciate your call, Derek.
The resentment part and the fed upness part. The country's not working for millions of people. They have to work 2 and 3 jobs. They can't afford anything.
What did Trump do for them?
Well, that's not the point. The point is that it fuels the sense that nobody's helping me. It was what Hillary Clinton missed completely.
Did they know there was a $1 trillion tax cut for the wealthy? Do they know that? Did they know he's lying about the wall that's going to keep all those horrible people out who are only trying to protect their families from violence and poverty? Do they know any of that?
I think it's a lot of bitterness and resentment, and with a good dollop of racism thrown in. I think it's a lot of those things. Okay, so coming up, we're going to be talking with Trenny Casey from NBC Sports Boston. We're going to talk to her about this kind of strange story. I can't wait to get her opinion out of The Blind Side, that great movie about the young, great athlete that we thought was adopted by this family wanting to help him. We're going to find out what's really going on there. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browder. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. The mayor will join us in 20 minutes, but first we're joined by Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Hey, Trenny.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hey, Trenny. So Jim should really ask this question because I don't really understand this reorganization of the college leagues, but it sounds like it's not good. And it sounds like Charlie Baker, who's running the NCAA now, thinks it's not good. He was credited, I guess, for making a bold comment.
We may have no power, but every expert who I saw comment on what he said, how disappointed he was, well, you can say what he said, was complimentary of his courage in standing up to these powerful people in college sports.
But explain what's happening, because I can't be the only person that doesn't really understand this.
So basically there used to be like a Power 5 conferences, right? So there were 5 really big conferences: the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and of course now I'm forgetting what the 5th one was.
Big Ten?
Big Ten. Did I not say Big Ten? Oh my gosh, Big Ten.
Okay.
And now it's basically whittling down to the Big 10 and the Big 12 and the SEC. So these other larger conferences. So when I was a kid, the Big 10 consisted of teams essentially in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. There was Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, Iowa, Minnesota, Penn State, Ohio State, teams like that, right? Now, Rutgers is in the Big 10. Maryland is in the Big 10. And now they just went and grabbed USC and UCLA and teams that are way out west. It just doesn't make geographical sense anymore. And there was a great article written in the Washington Post. It was a column about how, and it's right, it's all about money. NBC
Kevin Blackistone,
billions of dollars to go out and get the Big Ten. So now NBC has the rights to the Big Ten. They have the rights to Notre Dame. They're paying billions of dollars to broadcast these games. So the schools are making billions of dollars, and all the schools want to be in on the biggest amounts of money. And what bothers me the most about this, guys, and this has been my issue with, and I love college. I'm a huge college basketball fan. I went to Marquette. But what's always bothered me about college sports is that they operate under this ruse that they're student athletes. No, they're athlete students. Like, how can you tell me that a kid who's playing for the Wisconsin Badgers football team, who maybe in October, when you're going to have midterm exams, has to fly to UCLA to go play a game on a Saturday? How, the amount of time you have to be on a plane, the time you have to be away from your classes, all of these exceptions they're making, just make it a pro. At this point, it's really just a stone's throw from a minor league that leads to the NFL.
Yeah, without reading through the whole, I mean, Baker, when he makes this statement, is talking about the really powerful Division I schools and college sports overall, talking about competitive equity, student athletes. I mean, saying all the right thing, but it's pretty obvious. I don't mean this to disparage Governor Baker at all. He has zero power. I mean, these are all individual, powerful athletic directors, and they make all the decisions.
Well, and he'd have to get all of them on the same page to decide, okay, no, guys, we're going to go back to the way that it used to be. And the problem that happens is, so now you've got, I think there's 4 teams left. We'll use the Pac-12.
There are 4.
Because the Pac-12 used to be one of these power conferences. It was UCLA and Stanford and the University of Washington and Washington State, Oregon State. Well, now, Oregon and Washington and UCLA and UFC have fled. So now you've got teams, I think you've got Stanford, Washington State, Oregon State, and then again, there's one more team.
Berkeley.
Cal Berkeley that's left. 2 of those schools are high-end academic schools in Stanford and Cal Berkeley, right? So I don't feel like Stanford and Cal Berkeley, while they rely on athletics, they're basically Ivy League schools on the West Coast, right? So they're going to be fine. But a school like Oregon State or Washington State, which has already been in the shadow of the University of Washington and Oregon, the University of Oregon, which I would say are the 2 more premier state schools there, when you don't have top-tier athletics, your enrollment goes down. Your interest, and it sounds crazy, right? But using my own college application process, when I was in high school, I always wanted to go to the University of Wisconsin. Well, then the Badgers went to back-to-back Rose Bowls and won a Rose Bowl. I couldn't get in to save my life. I was waitlisted.
Do you know why BC became impossible to get into academically?
Matt Ryan.
No. Doug Flutie.
Doug Flutie.
Doug
okay,
Flutie
that long ago.
throws a pass and as a result,
Hail Mary
everybody
pass.
wants to go to Boston College.
So the solution to in this Washington Post column is just make these teams professional teams, pay their health insurance and their salaries. And what he was also talking about is you mentioned this to us before, where coaches go into a new school, they get rid of half the players that are on that roster, and they bring in players that they want.
That's rare. That's Deion Sanders.
Deion Sanders has done that at the University of Colorado.
Yeah, but
and it's.
That's kind of a weird thing. If you can do that, though, I don't know if that's the beginning of a trend or what, but it does sound like they are operating almost as professionals, but they're not getting any money.
Well, yeah, and the only one they can earn money, right? They can earn money now through the name and image and licensing deal that was struck.
The big shots.
The big shots.
But the linemen probably aren't earning any money.
Exactly, like your defensive lineman or your offensive lineman or your fourth string, wide receiver or running back. Like your star players can make a lot of money. I suppose they can still circumvent things and try to make money sort of under the table, but those guys aren't in high demand oftentimes, but yet they're putting in the same amount of work as everybody else. It's just a really inequitable system. The worst part about it for me, guys, is that especially at these public schools, like the highest paid public employee in the state of Alabama is Nick Saban, who is the head football coach for the university.
$7 or $10 million?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and then if he doesn't like you, he can bury you on the depth chart, or you have to transfer and go to a smaller school, and you don't get paid anything. Now, there is a transfer portal now, so at least guys, if they're unhappy and they're not getting an opportunity to play where they want to play, they can at least now move around. Like before, when you committed, you were committed whether your coach stuck around or not, or left for a higher paying job. So there is some freedom. I just think college athletics are such a farce. They're such a farce. Is
Charlie Baker going to fix all this?
I don't know that he can.
I don't think he can either.
I don't know that the president of the NCAA has that kind of power. Because essentially it's like being the commissioner of the NFL or any of the other pro leagues. You have to get all of the owners, and I know there aren't owners, but there are college presidents and athletic directors. And if your college is getting billions of dollars or at least hundreds of millions of dollars thanks to your high-end football program, which, by the way, it is untawdry as it is, it then filters down to other things. Like, you go to a school that has a really good football program and you probably have a state-of-the-art, health and wellness center. It might also filter funds to your crew team or your women's gymnastics team or other sports that are not revenue driven. So it's a double-edged sword. It's just, I oftentimes say I don't understand why we can't every once in a while as a country and institutions in the United States look to how other countries do it, because it's not like this anywhere else. It is not like this in Canada. It is not like this in Australia or Europe or anywhere else. You go to college to go to college. Sports are there. What are they called when you don't intramural? They're all intramural. You don't get a scholarship. You don't get to go to Harvard, even if you don't have the grades to go to Harvard, just because you can play football or baseball or basketball. You have to earn your way in. We just choose not to do it that way.
One last thing about Baker, because we're running low on time. He had a veto power here. He doesn't have veto power. He could stand up and hold a press conference, and everybody in Massachusetts almost admired him and knew who he was. Do you think the average NCAA fan has any idea who Trump? Of course, they don't know who he is. So I don't know how he's doing.
I mean, even back in the day, I couldn't pick out Mark Emmerich out of a lineup. Like, I never really paid attention. He's the predecessor to Charlie Baker. And it's too bad, because I think Charlie's really smart. And I think Governor Baker is really passionate about college sports. All of his kids were athletes.
So he played
he was an athlete.
Yeah.
And so is his
wife.
Okay, we have to hurry up because we want to get to the story.
No.
Michael Orr, people know him for the great athlete, great basketball, football player.
Football player.
Well, I thought he played basketball.
He did, like in high school, but he's known as being a football player.
No, being football. He's in the NFL. Blindside, that great movie.
Sandra Bullock.
Yes, he's claiming the family kind of screwed him, made millions.
I mean, basically they stole from him.
He was adopted.
So so I'm sure most of you who are listening have seen or at least heard of the movie The Blind Side, which is about a high school football player whose mother is addicted to drugs. When he goes and starts to play football at the high school, he befriends a kid, the family, this Sean Toohey Jr. The family, Michael comes to the house and the family says, "Oh, we'll adopt you. Oh, your mother is too sick to take care of you. We, this, savior family, is going to put you on the path to success." Well, it turns out that when he was under 18, they made him sign a conservatorship, which now, because of Britney Spears, we're all familiar with.
Right.
he thought they tricked him into believing, or at least according to his lawsuit, I should say, they allegedly tricked him into thinking that that was part of their adoption process. They never adopted him. The family and their biological children have made millions off of the residuals from the blind side of the everything that's happened around him. And this guy claims that he has made nothing. And now that he's had a chance to look through all the documentation and look at where he was hurt financially, he is now suing this family.
Let me just say, I hate to cite my source because I'll be embarrassed. The New York Post this morning at least reports the other side. The family says that's not true. It was because of adoption laws. They say they didn't make millions. I'm not attesting to this. I'm just saying what they said. And the New York Post reports factually that the father sold his franchise business, whatever it is, for $200 million. So one might argue money was not that important.
But it would seem
having said
you're either
that, it's a horribly
adopted
sad
or
story.
you're not.
Their contention is based on his age. Again, I have no idea if this is legit. I just read it this morning.
That they weren't able
they
to
weren't
adopt
able to adopt him. The only legal thing available to them was a conservatorship.
Oh.
And I have no idea. We'll try by next week to get the bottom. The worst part of this is
I think, though,
so
the
many
way-
people really fell in love with this story of this kid and this family, and it's all coming apart at the seams, regardless of who's lying.
And listen, again, there are two sides to every story, but even to sell it, to literally sell it as an adoption, that you adopted this kid and you took him into your own family, and then it gets turned into a Hollywood movie, like you're fooling a lot of people, including the person at the center of the story.
Well, we
It's
love
just
the
sad and
white
heartbreaking.
savior stories, you
right?
know,
And
we
that's
love those.
what's
exactly
heartbreaking,
right.
right?
It
Like
is.
here it is, we were these white saviors to this black child. And it turns out that the story is more tarnished than we realized.
By the way, we don't have time, unfortunately, to discuss
to
the
get
best
into
story of the day.
the hockey
Did you know
romance
there was a
novels?
genre of romance novels about ice hockey romance?
Well, you know what? We'll have more time next week.
Next week.
Next
Go
week.
into it in great
This is
detail.
an evergreen story,
Okay.
the hockey romance.
I think I have to try to read one between now and next week. These sound
I
like
would
they're
if I were
hubba,
you.
hubba,
So
hubba.
I did look into some of the TikTok videos in preparation of this
Oh, yeah?
segment. So, well, they're interesting. I can cut.
We'll check
they're a
them
little,
out. We'll check them out.
Okay.
Good to see you, Trent.
Something to
Sorry
look
we're
forward
short
to.
on time today.
Thank you very much, Trina Casey. She's an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Coming up after the noon news,
Whatever it
Boston
is.
Mayor Michelle Wu joins us for an hour to take our questions and yours. If you're at the library, you can submit your questions directly to the mayor with our audience mic. You can call or text us at 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Houston Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to be joined by the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu. We're going to take our questions. She will take our questions.
Whatever.
And her questions. 877-301-8970. We also have the homie mic here in the library, where our colleague Hannah is sitting at the desk. And if you want to talk to the mayor, you can speak to Hannah and get your question in.
And the Attorney General will be doing the exact same thing. Ask the Attorney General on Friday. So Mayor Wu is here in a couple of minutes. And by the way, you can start lining up if you want, because a lot of people complain. I call, I can't get through. 877-301-8970 is our number.
Do you want to preview what we may be doing later in the show if we have time?
I think I want to keep it a secret, because I don't want the mayor to be listening in her car and know what tough questions we have. I mean,
no,
obviously.
No, tough questions for her. I'm talking about the Prosciutto scandal.
Well, we had real conflict during the break because we are worried that the story of the month. The woman slipping and allegedly being injured.
That's right.
By slipping on the
Piece
prosciutto at Italy.
Italy in Boston, up the street.
May be one of the best topics for our callers, which we're going to do at the end of the show. And now, the agony we're in is we're not sure there's going to be enough time to do it at the end of the show. We may have to put it off till tomorrow, and it's probably the thing we prepared for. But you know what my thesis is?
What?
As a sort of half-assed lawyer.
Yep.
I used to be a whole-assed lawyer when I was younger.
Yes.
Do you assume the risk?
Whole-ass lawyer.
Do you assume?
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. I'm sorry I said that. Do you assume the risk when you take a free sample? I mean, that's what she was doing. She took a free sample, allegedly. And then she slid. I can't believe I'm discussing prosciutto when the mayor just walked in.
Mayor's here, so maybe you should change. Michelle Wu bearing gifts.
I think we're supposed to introduce her. Can we please welcome the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu? How are you, Mayor? It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. You know, you are one of the most gracious people ever.
Me? Thank you.
No, not you.
Oh, sorry.
I think the mayor has never come without a present. And where are our presents, Jim, that we never seem to get?
Well, I think it's a little different. We shouldn't be giving gifts to the mayor.
Jim is going to get you a smug mug. That's a picture of
Jim.
You
know what that is?
I don't know
well,
what
you're
that
going to
is.
find out next month.
Yeah.
What'd you bring today there,
So
Mayor Wu?
I subscribe to the everything you need to know in life you learned in kindergarten.
That's right.
Including show and tell is really important. So this is my usual showing off of a local business or event.
Great.
These are from Cafe Brazil Bakery in Allston. They are right along the route for Open Streets, which happens this upcoming weekend. And so this is the first year that we're doing Open Streets in Allston. It should be a great time. So there's coconut cake, pineapple cake, and honeymoons.
Wow,
Thank you very much,
You can
Mayor
start
Wu.
with Marjorie there.
Check that right out. Well, as long as you mention it, we were going to start with this, so it may as well, since you just mentioned it. Tell people about Open Streets in Allston and Brighton. What's going to happen?
This year, instead of 3 neighborhoods, we've shifted to 5 neighborhoods where on one weekend day for almost the entire day, 6 hours straight, the major road is shut down to vehicular traffic, which means it's free for kids to run around, not having to worry, for cyclists or scooters or small businesses to have tables out in the street, music and dancing. So it's a good chance to see everyone in the community come together, and we hope that you'll kind of go on this trip throughout the entire city and visit each of them. There are 3 left. It's basically been once a month, and Allston is this month, then followed by Dorchester next month, Dot Ave, and then East Boston.
And Newbury Street is every Sunday.
That's right, yes. Newbury Street is ongoing every single weekend.
I'm nervous to ask you this question. Nobody complains, I hope, do they, about the closing of
I'm
the
sure they
streets
do. Everyone loves to complain.
Well, there's been a lot of adjustment. The degree of logistical planning is quite intense, and that can be everything from how the fire department and public safety agencies will rearrange their routes so that they still know they can access everything when they need to for example, with Newbury Street, there was one particular parking garage that was right around when the street closure was supposed to end, but it was really affecting their business, so we shifted it back a little bit. And so there's lots of, we try to tailor it so that it works for every neighborhood.
It's fabulous, by the way. Keep it. I think it's just spectacular. I love that you're doing it. We're talking to Mayor Michelle Wu.
So, maybe on a much sadder note, you called a public safety and alarming conditions down in Massachusetts Avenue and Melanie Cass Boulevard. We talked about this a lot, where people who have mental health issues, drug issues, have now been surrounded by a lot of criminals taking advantage of that situation. There have been assaults there, and which is horrible. But I did think that there was some good news about Long Island this week, the bridge to Long Island and the revamping of those buildings. So tell us about that.
Yeah, and I will say it's a very, very difficult situation for cities around the country. You might have heard that I was away for a little bit, and when I was out in those other cities, I had the chance to talk with mayors there as well, and the scale at which people are having to grapple with the opiate crisis, homelessness, mental health, and everything falling down to the municipal level, when our responsibility is to anyone who shows up in our community, especially in the streets, who need housing and shelter. Everyone is trying to figure out how to meet the need, and it's growing every day. And so we are seeing tremendous success in terms of individuals who are getting services. And I will just, to set the entire context, remind everyone that when our administration started, one of the first things we did was to take stock of how many people were at Mass and Cass living in then very fortified encampments, some for 6-7 years at that point. There were 200 individuals. We got to know each and every person, their medical needs, their housing and family situations. And then we created 200 units of low threshold housing and moved everyone into that housing, took down every single tent, stored belongings, and the street was clear for the first time in 7 or 8 years at that moment. Out of the 200 individuals who were in that first original census, now nearly 150 people have even moved beyond that first step in low threshold medically supported housing to having a job, holding down income and housing supports, to having to being in permanent housing now. And so that in the span of a year, to see that many people transition all the way to the next chapter of their recovery is quite remarkable. We have served now more than 400 people through these low threshold housing units as others have cycled into their spots. Thousands of people have been connected to treatment, 150 people just in the last month alone, but thousands more individuals have arrived seeking services and shelter in this area. And so it has continued to be a challenge, finding the level of resources to meet the need, but even more so recently, it's been a very difficult and dangerous public safety situation, as there's probably about 230 people there during the day. About 30 to 40 people each night are seeking shelter, who we are placing as quickly as possible. But the crowds during the day make it very difficult, and frankly, some of the structures that are there, the tents and the tarps, are shielding where weapons are being stored, illegal weapons, drug trafficking, violence, and worse. And so we're working to, as we head into colder weather, make sure that we have action steps that will continue making it possible for services to be connected and delivered to people while we're planning for Long Island. So
which is 4 or 5 years away, even
4
if
years,
Quincy
yep.
doesn't win an
That's
appeal
right.
of the permit, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, but do you have, looking back, do you have any concern that you've downplayed the public safety aspect of trying to find a mix between public safety and public health, Mayor Wu?
I don't think that we have, I mean, from the beginning, we've been very clear that this is a housing and health crisis that then has implications that require coordination from all sorts of agencies. I've spent time shadowing with the police officers as part of the street outreach unit. I've gone on the 5 or 6 a.m. morning runs with the Public Works Department as they do their daily cleanings and sanitation in the area. I've spent time with the public health outreach workers, and we've done a really great job. The team has tried to find every possible way to continue innovating, improving the situation, adding 24-hour case management, expanding the spots available. But as more people come, we do need a long-term solution like Long Island and a large-scale campus where we can serve the needs of the region, because right now Boston is shouldering much of that.
We're talking to Mayor Michelle Wu. Speaking of housing, before we get to the calls, we talk to you ad nauseum every single month about your home rule petition for rent stabilization at the State House, which appears not to be flying through the legislature. As I'm sure you know, at least one legislator is talking about putting the question on the ballot, collecting signatures, putting it before the voters. If he does it, and it looks a lot like what you proposed in your draft legislation, would you support the ballot campaign?
I haven't seen the language yet, but if so, yes, absolutely. I will specify every city's situation is different. And so I actually, even though we have put forward with really intentionally what would work for Boston, to be clear how Boston would act if the ban statewide on cities regulating rents in some way were lifted, this is the balanced approach we would take. That wouldn't necessarily work in other cities either. So it's not a kind of copy and paste for other cities. We probably need much broader language that just empowers municipalities overall to take the actions that work for them.
Thing.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's take some
But
calls.
I will say, speaking of that,
sure.
because we're always talking about how city and state need collaboration, one big item that happened with the state, the legislature, and the governor's sign-off recently was Boston getting an MBTA board seat. So
how are you picking the person? How are you going to decide who that person is?
We are open, actually today, we are opening up a call for interest, both from residents and community members who have ideas for what the representative of our city on the MBTA's governance board should raise and the issues that they should take up, as well as you can submit your name for consideration. We're looking for someone who's a Boston resident, a regular MBTA rider themselves, committed to our vision of public transit as really an anchor for vitality, community, and the vibrancy of everyone in the city.
Speaking of the T, I was going to save this for later, but since you mentioned the MBTA thing, and then we will get to the calls. We had Philip Ang here for the first time the other day, and I think I speak for Marjorie. He's a pretty impressive guy with
He's so upbeat.
a lot of knowledge. The thing that really troubled
Ted Lasso, you know that's his nickname,
he is described in-house as the Ted Lasso of public transportation. He laughed, and he said he hopes he's lasts longer than Ted Lasso is the last thing. But I asked him about 12 different ways if he knew or would tell the public, either of those things, what the timetable to eliminate all the slow zones was. And his answer was, I can't, and we don't. Does that, I mean, it seems, I know nothing about public transportation, I must admit, at least the planning around it. It seemed to be trouble. Somebody with that level of experience doesn't say, well, here's our plan. We never know if it's going to work exactly as we put it together, but we can tell the rider our goal is by blank of next year, no more slow zones. Does that bother you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I understand a little. I haven't had a specific conversation about where they are at this stage. We've sat down and we're eager to support, and we'll use our MBTA seat to do that as well. But I have a guess as to the type of dynamic that he's facing, in that the T has really fallen so far in public confidence that any expectation that is not met now reverberates so much, right? We had the Orange Line shutdown where a certain set of initiatives was promised that would result in a certain set of benefits, and while much of those were delivered, afterwards there was just a deep dive into what happened, and then there was a feeling of, well, did this actually accomplish what it was supposed to? So maybe they are erring on the side of being really intentional and sure before they set any public expectation, because they are in such need of rebuilding trust. I also know their staffing challenges, which are very publicly documented. You can't promise anything in terms of service delivery until you're sure you have the people power to be able to back it up. And if that's a priority now, getting their hiring processes set, figuring out the signing bonuses and other mechanisms so that people want to step into these jobs and can sustainably do them, that probably has to come first.
But having said that, would you not be more comfortable as the leader of the city and leader of tens of thousands of people take the T every day if we did have a
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think people aren't demanding perfection. We all know there's a lot of work to do. We want transparency, and we want to know what's happening right now. And even if the timeline is a little further out, give us a sense. Is it next year? Is it 10 years from now? Just so we can start to figure out how we plug in. And that's the kind of advocacy that I hope we'll be able to provide on the T-board.
By the way, I just learned from our colleague Sandra, GBH will have a table at Open Streets on Saturday, and we have excellent swag, I should say. Would you not agree?
Excellent swag,
Where do you
absolutely.
want to go, Marjorie?
Lois in Mission Hill, thank you for calling.
Hey, Lois.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you a question about the difference between Mayor Menino's love of neighborhoods and support of the neighborhoods as individual and lots of personality, each one, entities, as opposed to the present. I hear an echo.
We're good here.
Okay, fine. As opposed to the present attitude toward development, which seems to be build, no matter what. We live in a small, low-rise part of Mission Hill, which is actually the city's smallest historic district as such, but it's not a historic district, it's an architectural conservation district. However, we really feel pressed upon by developers who want to put up their stuff, which seems to be the present formula seems to be 7 stories is okay, 150 units is okay.
Lois, I hate to interrupt you. What's the question for the mayor, if you would, please?
What's the present attitude toward neighborhoods that have a character of their own already, and don't want to see themselves overrun by developers?
We got it. I
Yes.
think the mayor
Thank
knows
you,
what you're
Lois.
talking about. Thanks, Lois.
Yes, and I have a sense of exactly what you're talking about and some of the challenges, because there have been many proposals for new buildings in that area over a number of years. And often what you are seeing in terms of new construction or kind of buildings rising up, it is also important to recognize how long of a time frame, how many years of planning approvals can go into that. And so it will take a little bit of time just to kind of fully see the approach and the results of our administration, but in terms of development, but we're working as quickly as we can on that front. I completely agree with you that Boston is special because of the character and the flavor of each of our neighborhoods, and that can be everything from the types of materials that are used or historical markers in the area to the shapes and the designs of the structures that are there. We, in fact, are making some major changes to how we oversee planning and development and zoning so that there will be more predictability in the process, along with more heterogeneity and recognition of the unique aspects of each neighborhood. And so a couple things happening right now. There's an effort to centralize and shift most of the planning efforts so that they can be coordinated among all of the various agencies that have anything to do with the built environment, not just the buildings themselves, but parks and environment and streets and mobility and arts and small businesses. And we're also working to finish a citywide design study that will come up with basically a set of standards for each neighborhood of what types of materials and shapes can really reflect that neighborhood's unique identity. You should never feel like when you're stepping into a neighborhood that you look around and it's bland like anywhere else with all big boxes. We really want to protect and enhance Boston's built environment by building on what is already here. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have any growth at all. We are under tremendous pressure, and I think the housing crisis and the cost of housing in the city, there are headlines every single day, and we see prices continuing to go up. That is going to be make or break for the city in terms of who will be able to live here. Can families with kids, can seniors, can frontline workers afford to be in our city? We do need to produce more housing as a region and as a state, and certainly Boston will pull our share of that.
Lois, thank you very much for your call. We really appreciate it.
We have a question from Michael at the library microphone here about the MBTA. Michael, you're on with the mayor.
Welcome,
Thank you
Michael.
for coming.
Thank you very much. This is an MBTA question. Is it possible to extend the hours of operation of the MBTA so that hospitality workers who are having difficulty affording rents in the city can at least get home after work in a low-cost manner?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. This is a major area that our city is behind, I believe, compared to other parts of the country and world. It also is holding us back in terms of unlocking a 24-hour nightlife economy, and as you say, those third sector workers who are often in healthcare or who are maintaining and servicing and cleaning the buildings throughout our city. It is very, very difficult and unsustainable when the T shuts down and you have to find your own way or afford a car or try to, make your salary stretch and use rideshare or something like that. There have been so many efforts over the span of, I would say, the last decade or so around late night tea, dating all the way back to Governor Patrick when there was a brief pilot launched for the MBTA to run later on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. I think it usually would shut down around 12:30 a.m. is when the last runs would leave from Park Street and go out into, along the various lines. That ended up being shut down because of budget, and they cited that there wasn't enough turnout or ridership to justify it. I'm rolling my eyes a little bit because I think we have to set up, one, a clear expectation of what the metrics for success are, but two, you can't have a one-year pilot and expect workers to take new jobs if they don't know that will be there after a year, or businesses to sign leases that are often 10, 15 years long if they don't know if this is going to continue. There have been various versions of night owl service on the bus lines that have been piloted in different areas, particularly for lines that serve more of our frontline workers as well. Some of the fundamental structural challenges, as far as I understand them, again, can't wait to dig in more with the MBTA board, that because our trains are much older and because they are not electrified, for example, it requires a certain number of hours to reset everything, to take the trains off the track for maintenance and services. So it would be a different system if our infrastructure were more modernized as well. So it's this extra urgency for us to be able to make those changes to the tracks and to the train cars and the signaling themselves so that we can open up all of what would be unlocked if we were able to do that.
Thanks for the question. By the way, I asked the same question of Philip Eng the other day, and Marjorie or Jamie, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think his answer was not unsympathetic, but it surely wasn't near the top of his to-do list, that he felt he had to fix what is rather than expanding what isn't. In any case, 877-301-8970. Michael, thanks for the question. Robin in Cambridge, you're on with the mayor of Boston. Michelle Wu, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call. And I want to first say, Mayor Wu, that I'm so impressed with you and your administration. I wish you were my mayor. I'm in Cambridge, but
Sybil's doing okay. She's doing great.
No, we really need you. And I have a history in Boston, but I read a really interesting article this week in Fast Company about what Apple Corporation is doing in California. They have designated and are already granting $1.5 billion for the elderly homeless and for others in the area. They've been very worried about affordability. They've been very worried about homelessness. They feel that these issues are important for their own sustainability. And I don't know if you're aware of this article, but they have some examples of amazing innovation in San Jose that I really think you should be aware of. So my question is, number one, are you aware of the article? If not, I can send it to you. And the other is, are you and your administration being as innovative as possible? Are you aware of what other cities are doing? I think the answer is yes, but I'd love to hear it from you.
Thank you. I will definitely look for the article. If we can't find it, we'll find it. But knowing FastCore, San Jose, elder housing, I'll try to find it and see. We're always on the hunt for great ideas and have no shame about trying to replicate the good ones from other cities. Housing is truly the area of focus and where we've been directing the federal recovery funds that we have and the public land that has been audited and made available, and any of the redevelopments of existing city buildings. We're trying to find ways to put housing on top. The West End Library, for example, we are actually building back, which it needs its own repairs, so we're building that back up and then adding housing on top, which will likely be part of our subsidized housing portfolio through the Faircloth provisions, where the federal government will pay for maintaining it if we build it. And so we're trying to do everything that we can. The state has been a partner as well, particularly for senior housing. There have been 3 new developments that are underway that the state has helped us fund as we look to close financing gaps. And whatever ideas on this front, we're really looking to dig in, because housing and transportation, supporting housing, I think, are the structural issues right now that we have to solve as a region.
Robin, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
Well, I know you wanted to mention some back-to-school situations and give us an update on White Stadium, so go ahead.
Yes. White Stadium it has been, after the RFP process and vetting and soliciting ideas, we have made the tentative designation for it to be a partnership with the Boston Public School System and a potential professional women's soccer team. This is a really unique arrangement that I don't know if you could find any other professional sports team who would be playing out of a public school-owned facility. But we're really excited about the chance to create the opportunities for our young people there, to host the team and to have such great role models in a really in one of the fastest growing, exciting sports right now, with some of the best athletes in the world as part of the U.S. women's soccer universe right now. So next steps would be digging in to negotiate a lease where they would renovate half of the grandstand for the team's purposes and locker rooms. BPS and the city would renovate the other half. Everything would flow together, and we would keep our fingers crossed to be able to welcome that team.
Park, right?
Yeah, in the middle of Franklin Park.
That's what I thought.
Let's go to I'm sorry.
Oh, we didn't get finished the school bus.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
We've hired enough school bus drivers this year, so maybe things are not
we are. This is the
bite your nails the first week of school.
Perpetual set of questions of how will students get to school right away, and over the years there have been, questions about whether the schedules were set ahead of time with enough advance notice, or whether there were enough drivers or bus monitors to be able to get students where they needed to go. I just came from the August Leadership Institute with all of our school leaders and their teams and superintendent and school committee chair this morning, and Superintendent Skipper reported that we have 733 bus drivers hired and ready to go, plus another 30 who are in the CDL large vehicle driver's license training program right now. This is the first time we've been fully staffed with school bus drivers in at least pre-pandemic and maybe in many years since then. We also, in terms of bus monitors, have 100 more bus monitors hired and ready to go this year than at the start of school last year, just as a comparison point. 97% of the vacancies that the Boston Public Schools has overall are filled. We just are in a really, sometimes it's small victories when there's been such disruption and stress on the school system through the pandemic and since then. And so it's been a lot of hard work in terms of organization building, training, and I'm really excited as a mom, I'm extra excited for the kids to go back to school, but I'm excited for where we're headed this school year.
There's an honest woman. 877-301-8970. One more call, then we'll take a break. Lorraine in Brighton, you're on with the mayor.
Greetings, Marjorie and Jim. Good afternoon, Mayor Wu.
Hi.
Good afternoon. A few things, one very quick and others that be a slight bit longer. Rats is my first topic. Boston has always been plagued by rats. I think part of the reason is that we put out a nightly smorgasbord for them. Boston does not require garbage cans with lids. People put out their plastic bags full of garbage, and the rats say, "Okay, guys, dinner," and everybody comes and eats. And it seems to me it won't solve the problem, but it certainly could help. Covered garbage cans. Why not?
Great. What was your other question?
The DCR pools are all closing this Sunday. And I know that the problem largely is a shortage of lifeguards. The lifeguards make between $20 and $27 an hour. It's a highly desirable summer job. And I think there needs to be another pool, no pun intended, of people to draw on to be lifeguards. What about retired Navy SEALs? They know how to swim.
We got it, Lorraine. Let's have the mayor respond to both, if you will.
Thank you so
Thanks
much,
for the
Lorraine.
call.
I love your problem-solving approach also. You belong in city government. On the rats issue, so first of all, on the kind of how we respond to rodents and rats, the city is taking a much more coordinated approach. As you mentioned, it's not just about getting the call that there are rats or a burrow somewhere and then going out and putting traps, but trying to identify the source of the food sources, water sources, and figuring out ways to eliminate them, which requires a lot more collaboration between different departments, analyzing the data and seeing where we go. We want to strike the right balance between limiting those food sources, but also making sure that we're still meeting people where they are and having our trash pickup services be accessible as possible. So we're planning to make some changes to the trash contract as well as it comes up for renewal in the next couple of years. There's some one-year extensions that are possible, but we're really thinking about bringing some more specificity to the contract. Right now, it's one standard contract that applies to every neighborhood in the city. And then there's a few locations that have a slightly different pickup, but we need to identify there are certain neighborhoods, including Alston, including the downtown area, where it's a different density of restaurants and other areas that are generating those food sources. And so that has to be taken into account, whether it is later times that we require trash to be out by so that you could put it out the morning before you head out for the day, as opposed to having to get it out the night before because you don't want to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. to put out the trash. That has a lot to do with how we structure the incentives for our vendors, as well as how we can manage traffic, how we factor in yard waste and separating that out into a different day. So a lot of that is underway as we're thinking about this window opening up for renegotiating the waste management contract. Rats will certainly be a piece of it. On pools and lifeguards, this has been a big area of focus for the city. We want every young person growing up in Boston to know how to swim, to have access to swim lessons, and that means we need our pools to be open. There have been many, many years of deferred maintenance on the pools, and we have gotten more open, even in the time that we've been in office, than in a very long time, but through a combination of other pools coming offline or school buildings that are closed down for school construction so that we can't have the pool in the building open even though the pool is okay. It'll take us a little bit of time, but we are making good progress in having the pools functional and renovated and on schedule, having audited the whole system. We are actually fully staffed up in terms of lifeguards at the city level, but understand that other agencies certainly have challenges, and part of that has been creating a free lifeguard training program in the city of Boston as well. And so this is a great job opportunity. We want to make sure that it pays well and is available for everyone in the city.
Mayor, you were just mentioning the pools and that they have been neglected for many, many years. And this, as you know, became kind of a sticking point. BUR reported that the city council knew about Boston swimming pool closures long before the summer. Apparently 10 of the 18 have been closed, mostly pools in Mattapan and Dorchester. So it does seem like, were they that bad that they couldn't be open for the summer? Was that the problem?
So there's I could run down the list in my head of all of the different situations, but overall, I will say, unlike previous years, no pools were closed this year at all due to staffing shortages. And so again, with the availability and focus on recruiting lifeguards, that was a major success and step forward. Several of our pools are at the point where the filtration system is broken, or they are losing so much water that it is not safe, or there's some other structural issue. We have tried wherever possible to accelerate construction and total renovation. 2 more pools were reopened this year after renovations and adjustments, but the challenge was that 2 other pools were not available over the summer because, as I mentioned, the school buildings, they're co-located in school buildings, and the schools were under renovations, and this was the only time that the schools could be renovated, is during the summer when the students were there. So there will be a couple more of those situations where the co-located pools over the next year will be coming offline because of school renovations, but in about a year or year and a half, we should be able to see all of the work that we're doing in getting the renovations started and completed really coming online and being felt by everyone.
Meaning there could be the same level of closures next summer, too.
We will have, I think, another 2 coming offline because of school building related issues, but we should have, I think we will end up having more open, even some that may finish renovations later this year, miss the summer, but they'll be open for the rest of the year.
We have to take a break. Before we do, we have seen you dance. We've seen you jump into a swimming pool.
Yep.
We've seen you play the piano at Symphony Hall. Have you done the slide yet, or have you not?
Tell people about the City Hall slide.
Well, she's smiling. Let's see what the answer is.
Okay, the slide is for children. I will just be clear. Some of us are children at heart and would like to just test out to understand the real situation there. So I will not comment on that right now.
So you have?
I have not yet.
Yeah. By the way, we had Billy Dean Thomas here the other day, who's in charge of whatever engagement at City Hall Plaza, and we asked them about being responsible for the slide, and they said, not me. So in any case, we got to take a break.
This is the slide. We should tell people where it's supposedly for kids, but many adults, including apparently a police officer, tried the slide, and it did not go well for those adults who tried to get down this slide, which is made for the 5 to 12 set.
And it looks like there's a group of young people who want to get after the break.
We're going to call them in a second.
Perfect.
We are.
Okay. We are talking with the Mayor of the City of Boston, Michelle Wu. We very much appreciate her time. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back. You're listening to 89.7 GBH Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Riga. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. Friday, the Attorney General will be here for Ask the Attorney General. Right now, the Mayor of Boston is here for Ask the Mayor. She's here a little bit after 1 o'clock. We were going to, at this break, welcome students, and thank you, Annie, our colleague, students from Epiphany School in Dorchester, but apparently a student at the Epiphany School has a question. Is that correct, Latif? Yes? Come on over, Latif. Welcome to all of you, by the way, and thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. What's up, Latif?
I'm doing good.
Good. A little bit, raise the mic a little bit towards your mouth. Just tilt it. No, I mean angle it a little bit. Perfect. Good.
All right. Hey, Mayor.
Hello.
I'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak on things we have on our minds. I'm going into the 10th grade, and I noticed that there's a lack of resources in Boston public schools versus private schools. What are your plans on improving that and making a change?
And what kind of resources in particular are you thinking about, Latif?
Technical, and like resources like in the classroom, such as like desks, books, and things of that sort.
Yep. Okay. Great.
Thanks, Latif.
First of all, congratulations. 10th grade is really exciting, and can't wait to see what roles you step into after that. What did you do over the summer? Did you have a job or
I worked at the Epiphany.
Oh, great. So one, I just want to emphasize like you're a perfect role model, that what we want to think about for schools and the resources available for our students and young people isn't just about the months that you're in the classroom, but year-round, after school, before school, and all of that. And so we were really excited that the city had doubled the number of paid summer jobs slots this summer, filled them, went above and beyond, and we're going to try to even push that goal more next year. In terms of what you see when you walk into a building, I agree that for years that has been something that has just been heartbreaking for me. There's some schools where you go in and, the bathrooms aren't working, or there aren't shades properly on the windows and the sun's coming in your eyes. So having the facilities and the technology in place is a big priority of ours, and that's why we are renovating and rebuilding so many school buildings. We're trying to find ways to make the major investments that some of our schools that have been neglected for far too long, like Madison Park, for example, will get the full space and physical space they need to have the programming that our students deserve. I think arts and sports are a really important part of it too. It's not just about the academic subjects. We want to make sure there's rigorous, nurturing, learning environment, but then also that you get to be involved in whatever sports you want to play, and play an instrument or sing or dance or perform or do visual arts, so that you're really growing as a whole person. And so some of that is really coming up with what are the basic standards that every school needs to have. For every elementary school, what do we need to guarantee? For every high school, what do we guarantee as a baseline? And some of our high schools, frankly, are a little bit too small to have the full range. You're kind of trading off. You can't have as many academic class choices or AP classes, and you can't have as many sports at one time when the school is so tiny. And so we're starting to make space to be able to scale things so that everyone will have full access to opportunity. And then the last thing I want to say is partnerships. Every major business in Boston should have some school that they are working with or investing in. We're already working with some of the tech and life sciences and biotech companies to get involved with the schools. We just launched a new partnership with JetBlue, where they're going to be investing in aviation pathways and training programs. Mass General Brigham is working with us on designing health career opportunities and expanding that. So there's so much to offer in the city that really the entire city should be your classroom, and we want all of that to be available through every single school.
Latif, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. You know, Mayor, I hate to be a broken record, and I would ask this question of the Commissioner of Police, who, we've invited him half a dozen times, and we're told they're looking at his schedule. We've discussed John Danilecki with you, a captain, who was accused 4 years ago of excessive force by a resident of Dorchester. It's been 2.5 years, I believe that's the right period of time, since Internal Affairs looked at this and determined that he had violated the use of force guidelines and had lied. And my understanding is he's still out there, I assume, still supervising cops. There have been other misconduct allegations against him in those 2.5 years. And at least, as far as I know, the commissioner's done nothing to make a determination here. Do you know what's going on? And two, are you troubled that people in the city are on his watch, even though he's been accused of pretty serious things that have been confirmed by Internal Affairs?
I did ask about this one in particular because it has been a broken record, and I figured I would just
my apologies for the broken record. Yeah.
And I do not have an update to share in terms of a formal resolution, but I can assure you that action in terms of the internal processes is moving along. We are in this large of an organization. I think we're always striving to make sure that the processes can be both efficient, but also ensure that there is enough consideration and due process. And so, I don't want to jump to conclusions in terms of trying to preempt or short circuit what happens internally, but I know it is moving along.
So I'll ask you what I asked you a few months ago in the spirit of the broken record that I am. You're a resident of Boston, and he is supervising people in your neighborhood, and you know about his record. By the way, this is not an outlying charge. There have been a lot of these through the years. How do you have confidence that your health and safety is being adequately protected by somebody whose own internal affairs department has said he used excessive force and lied? What do you say to that person?
We are working to make sure processes work well and work as quickly as they can, but they can be complex and can require a lot of internal documentation. And the way the system is set up right now, with how the contract is set and the other protections that are in place to make sure that every single complaint or allegation is sufficiently investigated, it's the balance that we are living in right now.
Are you concerned? Last question: are you concerned that it's taken this long for an adjudication by the commissioner?
I don't know the particulars of this case and why the time is taking this long. There are others that I had been more updated on and briefed on, for example, relating to January 6th, and those were quite significant with many, many layers of interviews and documentation and securing other bits of information. So they take these investigations very seriously.
I should know this, and you just refreshed my memory to a point. Has there been a resolution with the guy the cop who's living in New Hampshire vis-a-vis January 6th? What was the resolution
he's no longer
there?
on the force.
He's off the force. Okay. We're talking to Mayor Wu, Michelle Wu.
We just got a text from a gentleman named Mark, works for Boston Water and Sewer, and he says city workers are underappreciated. They can't afford to live here, but we must. And I want to know what we can do about this. There's a lot of city workers, I would think, in that same boat, that rents have become so unaffordable that they don't make enough money to live here, and yet there are these requirements, at least for a period of time, that they live in the city. Should that stand, that requirement, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I still, this is really difficult because it has become a patchwork of requirements depending on what different unions have negotiated, and so there are some, I think the vast majority of city workers are covered by an agreement that requires 10 years of residency in the city. And after that, it is up to everyone's choice. There are some places where the 10 years is not required at all. I believe that it's important for city jobs to be a source of stabilizing and creating wealth in our communities wherever possible, and that historically they have played a function to help people get rooted in our communities and live and understand the issues here, and then give back and be involved. With housing prices where they are now, that becomes a very stressful situation, especially when some of the unions that have the least flexibility on residency requirements are also at the lowest end of the wage spectrum as well. And so, we're looking to, again, focus in general on the housing crisis, but also think about ways that we partner with municipal unions and others around housing vouchers or subsidies and supports, thinking about city worker housing in particular. But there have already been changes where, for example, it used to be a requirement across the board that if residency applied, you had to prove residency before you could get your first paycheck. In cases now where someone is having to relocate to the city with prices how they are, it is not possible for them to afford a place before they start getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
So there's been some short time frames for people to get started with a 6-month window, for example. And so we're trying to adjust where we can, but this has been a source of stress for many, many workers, and certainly something we're in collaborations about as we think about the next round of bargaining.
Let's go to West Roxbury. Paul is on the phone with the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hey, Paul.
Yes, thank you very much. Hi, Mayor Wu. When you served on the city council, you wrote an extensive critique of the BPDA, Boston Planning and Development Agency, successor to the BRA, Redevelopment Authority. What were you hoping to accomplish with that, and you called for its abolition or restructuring? What were you hoping to accomplish? What problems did you think that would solve? And what is your current thinking on that? Is it you have a new director in place, Arthur Jameson? Have you put that aside for now? What is your current thinking?
No, in fact, we are moving forward with much of it. The original impetus behind that 70-some page report was just observing that in many, many cycles of the city's history, there had been, basically since the BRA was established, the Boston Redevelopment Authority, and since the backlash stemming from the clearing of the West End and displacing, whether you call it 12,000 formally or informally estimated 20,000 people, there had always been a call that that structure wasn't working because it was short-circuiting the public planning process and community involvement and prioritizing the kinds of development review that would lead to individual parcel-by-parcel action rather than a collective and coordinated approach to the built environment. And so I was hoping with that report of kind of bursting the bubble that we would always keep talking about it but couldn't actually move on it without state approval and state legislation, which can be complicated to get. And so I outlined in that report the specific actions that we could take uniquely at the city level, which included shifting employees over, changing real estate practices, and shifting some of the funding and ownership so that it would be more accountable to just as any other department is. And in fact, we are moving forward on that. And so the BPDA's employees will all be shifted over to the City of Boston. They will be subject to the same accountability and processes as every other city department, unlike what it had been previously. There's some logistical HR things that have to be worked out there because they were on a different pension system and retirement plan, and we want to make sure everyone is whole and better off and not having to sacrifice different parts of their employment working environment that they had been guaranteed when they were hired. And so there will be a little bit of a transition there. But we've already created a planning advisory council that is on the city side and not sitting over the BPDA, which coordinates centralized planning and consideration between the development review and planning arms, as well as our streets cabinet, arts, small business, environment, climate, and housing. And disability access and the equity cabinet. We are also changing the zoning code and working to operate at a different scale so that we're not going just neighborhood by neighborhood, which is ineffective because it takes too long to be implementable at a scale that is real and then also doesn't give enough specificity to individual parcels. So you kind of are in this middle that doesn't make sense anyway. We're moving to a squares and corridors targeted approach where every neighborhood's main business district will get some improvements that will be at the right scale of density, provide foot traffic for the small businesses, and create more housing. We're linking together our citywide open space and civic space master plan in addition to the design study that I mentioned earlier. So much of that is up and running, and the goal is that all of the consideration for how buildings are built will be folded into and just as accountable as any other operation that the city is taking.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the call. Right before I think it was right before the NAACP convention came to town, you said this convention will forever leave its mark in infrastructure, community building, and determination of Boston to be a city that leads the way. It came, it went. What's your takeaway from its week here?
It was kind of magical. I got the chance to see our city through the eyes of many convention goers who had never been to Boston before, and many of whom quite intentionally had not been to Boston before because of the public and national reputation that we have had. And to see the community come together here, not only with the small businesses who were really staffing and providing the services for every part of the experience, but the hub that was set up right in the convention center, which was a really unique, I think, addition to the convention overall, which was a free space. You didn't have to be registered for the convention, and there were tables for local vendors, Black-owned businesses, community organizations with information, and there was so much pride and energy and sense of progress in the city, while also reflecting on the fact that many people were here for the first time because of the racial tensions and divisions that we had not fully addressed in the past. So I think overall, we accomplished our goal. Tanisha Sullivan, the president of the local branch, and Michael Curry, who was our Boston hometown hero who serves on the national board of the NAACP, had each, from their respective perches, wanted to ensure that Boston would show a certain side of our city that we know is here, but the rest of the world didn't necessarily know. I think that was incredibly successful. I heard very positive feedback from everyone feeling welcome and excited to be here. We were told that we were the most eagerly welcoming city by the board of any city who hosted. So that was a proud mark for us. And I think in terms of what remains, the impact from small businesses who got contracts, expanded their areas of service and products, we have a lot more work to do, but it was exciting even to show off a seaport that looks very different and was home now to several Black-owned businesses who are doing incredible work every single day. Just in the last couple years, that is something different than what we would have seen.
You know, speaking of the NAACP convention, Jim and I got a chance to talk to a couple of entrepreneurs there at the convention, and one of them was a woman who does event planning, and she talked about doing events in Israel, doing events in Washington, D.C., had never gotten a contract right here in her hometown. The other gentleman was a parking entrepreneur and talked about the same kind of thing, that we talk about the racial wealth gap in Boston, yet you have all these Black-owned, women-owned businesses that can't seem to get any work, which maybe would be fixed with the NAACP convention, or at least partially fixed. But that brings me to Jaylen Brown, the superstar at the Celtics, who's talked about the racial wealth gap a lot, talked about having a Black Wall Street right here in Boston, reminiscent, not for the tragedy of Tulsa, Oklahoma, but for what was there before that tragedy in Tulsa, Oklahoma, decades ago. So have you talked to him? And you know what? I mean, he's a pretty charismatic guy. I mean,
he's got a lot of money right now.
He's got a lot of money. That's right. I think he got a $304 million extension with the Celtics, so he's got a little extra cash hanging around. I mean, what do you think about? Have you talked to him, and what do you think about his ideas?
He's just been absolutely fantastic for the city. Long before this contract was signed, and I'm just so happy to see him really making history with it and getting that supermax that he deserved. But years before, he was already just showing up unannounced at basketball tournaments in our neighborhood parks just to be in community and make sure that our residents could see and feel the support. I got the chance to spend some time at the summer camp that he had organized this summer, a STEM program focused on Boston youth. And so he's been working in a number of areas to support the city for a very long time through the foundation work and the work that his family does. And then now to have the platform of someone who has the eyes of the world on them, really pushing everyone to think about how we can all give back and how we all have a responsibility to address the harms that are still very present in our community. I'm not surprised, but I am really, really excited because it just gives even more momentum to the work that we're doing locally. He's going to be a great partner.
We have time for one more quick one. It's John from Gardner. John, you're on with the mayor. Hello.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A quick aside, I live virtually across the street from the municipal pool here in Gardner. They're a great thing, especially the outdoor one. So you already talked about it, but whatever you can do to boost that priority, that'd be a wonderful thing, in my opinion. Mass and cash. I'm an alcoholic. I've been fortunate to be sober a long time. I worked in the prison system for 21 years as first third as a drug and alcohol counselor, the last 2/3 as a recreation officer, which was involved with programming and stuff. I guess the point I want to emphasize is that for non-addicts and non-alcoholics, I don't think people understand the allure of that atmosphere. As crazy and unhealthy as it is, there's a draw to that beyond the people that I hope are going there to eventually get services. I'm sure you've elicited input from people that have lived that lifestyle. I won't pretend to say I have not, but I've talked to a lot of people that have let me into their reality on it. I think there needs to be more of a stick as well as a carrot approach, something along the lines of what Sheriff Tompkins had proposed. But there's people down there, criminals, preying on sick and suffering addicts and alcoholics. And that would be a big start to getting things on the right track. But I just want to emphasize it, for lack of a better word, for normal people, it's hard to understand how that would be an attractive atmosphere. But it is, because if you're stuck in that lifestyle, there's parts of it that are boring and mundane and crazy, and people get the idea that that might be a place to go where I have some camaraderie, if you will. And I know you've talked about, what you say, thousands of people have come in since your tenure, and I know you inherited a crazy mess. And in the long term, Long Island is the answer, but we know that's a long ways off, or a big part of it. But whatever you can do to elicit input from people that have lived that kind of lifestyle and know what it's about, because I think the academics and regular people, and I'm not besmirching anybody, I don't think they understand that component of it, that's just going to be a magnet as long as there's any part of it still going on like that.
John, good to hear from you as always. Thank you.
Thank you for the call.
Thank you, John. Thank you for sharing your story and for making sure that you're speaking up for other people who I think often are left out of the conversation. It's been really important to us from day one to build our programming and services off of the specific needs and the relationships that our teams have built with people who have been at Mass and Cass. And that's why so much of the day-to-day outreach is really understanding where people are in their recovery journey, what they need, what they might be ready for, what they're looking for in terms of housing and support. And because our teams are on the ground doing that every day, we have a good sense of who is in the area for services and who is, as you allude to, coming to the area because they might be taking advantage of or introducing criminal activity to those who are in need of services. And, you know, I've shadowed every possible part of our teams who are on the ground, and you hear from everyone that it is a different dynamic when it is people who need services, but in a crowd of hundreds of people where you look around and there's criminal activity happening, violence that people are afraid of, and the tents and tarps really do shield a lot of it. When I've spoken to people who were on Long Island or experienced some of the programs, the recovery and housing that had been on the island previously, almost everyone said the first thing out of their mouths is how much that environment was just as important as the programming and the services themselves, that you could be on such a peaceful place where it was just nature and you look out and you can see the city skyline, but there was just this calm, and that contributed a lot to the effectiveness of being in recovery and being able to focus on themselves and what they needed. And so we definitely are looking to both create that as quickly as we can, but probably in the 4-year time frame on Long Island, but also recognize that the environment really does matter as well in where we're creating access points for people to access services and starting to just reduce the crowds, because it's creating a dynamic that is not safe and is adding a lot of other elements that are not supporting and in fact are undermining people's recovery.
Mayor Wu, thank you. Can you give us an hour's notice before you do the slide, too, so we can be there? You have our numbers. If you can just give us maybe 90 minutes.
It will be too dark to see anything.
I don't think so.
Thank you
Mayor
very
Wu,
much.
we appreciate your time. As
thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. We're very grateful she comes in once a month to take our questions and yours. We're sorry I couldn't get to everybody, but we did the best we could. Thank you again, Mayor Wu. Coming up, food blogger Manny Merville behind Everybody Gotta Eat blog. He's brought along a mysterious mango man, and they've got a great community food festival coming up that we're going to talk to them about up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. Friday at the library. This Friday, we'll be back again. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will join us for Ask the AG. You know, the mayor brought us a couple of pieces of pastry.
Yeah.
I think she may have been outdone.
Yeah,
by
we got
these
some
next
big
couple
time.
of
That was
guys.
a very heavy cooler, it seemed to
So
be.
we're joined now live at the BPL by Emmanuel Merville. He's Brockton's premier food vlogger behind Everybody Gotta Eat. He's brought along a buddy. I don't know if we're supposed to call this guy Curvin Edward or Mango Man, which is how you're known to most people. Hello, Mango Man. It's nice to see you.
How you guys doing?
It's all in service of the 4th annual community cookout that's happening in Cambridge at Green Rose Heritage Park. It's a week from next Sunday. It's August 27th, 12 to 6 or 7?
Yeah, 12 to 6 p.m.
12 to 6 p.m. More information, you go to everybodygotta.com,
Yes.
correct? Gentlemen, it's great to see you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. So before we find out what's going to happen, you can give us more of the details and stuff. This is a pretty heartwarming story about Manny's mom that fed the whole neighborhood. So and even went into prisons back in Haiti. So tell us about how your mom impacted what you end up doing now.
She was just always a giver. Her and my dad just always gave whatever they had. They helped people, and she would feed people, go to the jails in Haiti, go to the slums, just help people, and they would help people get into the States, and when they get here, they would feed them and give them shelter and stuff like that. So I think it was something that was always in our blood, just giving back and just helping people.
But Manny, my sense of you, and I met you at that fabulous thing Tracy Chang did for Bagu.
Yeah.
That was a fabulous event a couple of weeks ago, and you were cooking, your buddies were there too.
Yeah.
The sense I get from my brief conversation with you is feeding people, either with your family or now you, is not just about satisfying a need, but there's a broader kind of connection thing that food means to you. Is that, am I getting it right?
I feel like food brings people together, and I think people enjoy food and stuff like that. So, when you have a good meal, you're happy, so we want to make people happy. We want to keep the good energy out there, you know what I mean? So, it's always fun to see people taste your food and enjoy it, and look at you.
Excuse me, look at you.
Yeah. No, he's into food. He's into food, very much into food.
You know what I also love? I love mangoes. But
he got the best
You
mangoes.
have a family connection to mangoes too, correct?
I sure do.
So am I calling you Mango Man?
Yes, you can call me.
Is that really what I'm calling you?
That's what everyone else is
Okay,
calling
Mango
me.
Man. Tell us about the family connection to mangoes and what you're doing, what your connection to what Manny's doing is.
So, I got the name Mango Man. My father had been importing mangoes from Haiti into the United States for about 65 years.
Wow.
So after college, I decided to get into the business, importing mangoes on this side of the United States and distributing it all over the United States. So I started in the Chelsea market, New England produce, and I distribute to all those guys. Now we're distributing mangoes within at least 48 states.
48
Wow.
states? What's your connection to him?
So I also cook, and I'm a chef. And Manny's a good friend of mine, so we do a lot of stuff together. So whenever he has big events, he'll reach out to me. We also have another guy that cooks with us, Flavor Cater, yep. Flavor Cater.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah, so we all cook together, we come together, we just make it happen.
Do you have the same attitude about what food means in a community as your buddy Manny does here, beyond just the fun and satisfaction and filling a need?
Pretty much, because without food, we can't survive. So we need the food.
Yeah.
Especially if the food's good, our clientele keep coming back.
So tell us, Manny, what's good? Tell us more. Jim mentioned, the event at the Green Rose Heritage Park a week from next Sunday. But what's going to happen there if people show up?
Oh my God, man! I mean, every year it just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
They're roasting pigs. They're guys just want to outdo.
They're going to roast a whole pig?
Yeah.
Really? So you're going to see it on one of those spits?
They might
going
even do a
around
goat
and
too, but I know they're
oh my
definitely
gosh.
doing a pig.
Yeah, they go round and round and round
they're
that
roasting
spit.
it all day.
Oh, I don't know if I'd like that.
Their grills are going.
It's not live, Marjorie.
No, it looks nice. It's fun. They're grilling lobster. It's like a lobster seafood fest out there, honestly. lobsters everywhere, red snappers, you name it. People are just trying to give you some good food and have a good time.
And a lot
You're
of kids
expecting
stuff.
more than 1,000 people, too, right?
Huh?
You're expecting more than 1,000 people.
I mean, it gets bigger and bigger. I mean, the old ladies out, the young girls out, the kids out. I mean, everybody comes out, have a good time. They're on the bouncy houses. There's raffles. There's backpack giveaways. We're just trying to give back and have a good time. And, you know, when I come by the neighborhood, they're like, when's the cookout? When's the cookout? And I'm like, it's every year the same date. I do Food Fest also, so I want to do another Food Fest this year. But the cookout is like my pride and joy.
What's this cost to go to this thing?
It's free.
Say it again.
It's free. Everybody can come.
Free
Bring
99.
your aunts, your uncles, your sisters, your brothers, whoever. It's all love out there.
Now, I have a question for Mango Man, because I really like mangoes, but you have to make sure that you get them nice and right before you cut them. So would you say soft all the way around, and does the green mango have to turn yellow, or what's the deal?
So the process with the mango, when you receive it, it's green and it's hard.
Yes.
Once it starts changing colors, you can cut it up and eat it.
Okay, change colors to what, though? Does it have to be all the way yellow? Or
It doesn't have to be all the way yellow, but if you want it to be all the way yellow, it'll be nice, soft, and juicy.
Yeah, that's what I like. and so all the way yellow and kind of soft so you can squish it. Okay.
I usually leave my mangoes and let them get all the way yellow, and I'll squeeze them and just make like a juice out of it.
Yeah.
So when mangoes are in season, how many are you moving? How many mangoes are you moving like in a week?
Truckloads. Truckloads.
So it's container loads. So we have a container that has 20 pallets. Each pallet holds 216 cases. So that's about 4,800 cases.
You sick of mangoes or no?
Never.
Never. So do you call, when you're alone, you two guys, and you're cooking, you're preparing for event, do you actually call him Mango Man? I mean, how do you refer to this guy?
I call him Mango.
You call him Mango?
I just call him Mango.
Yeah. So does he call you everybody gotta eat?
I mean, that's too long. I got so many nicknames. They just call me whatever comes to mind. But we just have a good time with it. The mango season is the best season because everybody's eating. My son knows him well. Mango Man. You know?
So you gentlemen brought some food.
Oh, wait,
You're
we
very
forgot
excited
about
about
that.
that.
Sure
He
did.
wants to know what gets to eat there. Look at this. Look at this
They're
huge
reaching
case.
down. This is rather
This is
large.
massive.
They're picking it up. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
The container's even beautiful.
Container's gorgeous. Got mangoes on it.
By the way, let me
everybody
just
gotta
say,
eat the other one.
in anticipation of this event on August 27th, as I said, I met Manny at the thing that Tracy Chang did outside a restaurant, Pagu in Mass Ave. And beyond the fact that the food was fabulous, it really is a community building kind of thing. I mean, it is a connecting, a networking, and it really is like a feel-good. And the food was great, but it wasn't just about the
it
food.
was a
And I'm
vibe.
sure that's,
It was a vibe.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah, so we gave some awards that day also.
Yeah, like what? Like what?
So two people that I grew up with that I have a lot of respect for, Terrell Deutsch and Mo Barboza, they run the teen center in my neighborhood, and those guys put a lot of work with the teens. They help them. So that what happened at Pagu was to raise money for the culinary courses that go on at the Moses Community Center in Cambridge.
You were at the Moses Community Center when you were a kid, weren't you?
I grew up there.
Yeah.
But it's like, I almost cried because I haven't been there so many times, you know what I'm saying? But no, it's just a good place to be. And, Mo was there when I was growing up. Now my good friend Terrell's there, and he's running it. And it's just, I just felt like those guys deserve their flowers, you know what I mean? So we gave them 2 awards, and now the cooking classes, Pagu started the cooking classes at the youth center, and who knows, we might get a James Beard Award-winning chef over there.
Before you just, I'm sorry.
Something else I was reading about, you got aspirations beyond all this. You're hoping to be the next Anthony Bourdain on TV show, yeah?
That's the goal, man.
Yeah,
like,
that's the goal.
As a kid growing up, I watched Anthony Bourdain, all the food shows, especially the traveling ones, and my dream is to travel the world and eat their food, let them taste some of our food, and just have a good time. So I think it's happening. I'm shooting right now. Who knows? I might be on Netflix soon.
Oh my gosh.
I got a documentary that I did with the Community Arts Center in Cambridge. It's a art center that I grew up in, and I did video classes there when I was growing up. So they approached me to do a documentary, and we just had it play at MIT and Harvard. So who knows? You know what I mean?
Was Mango Man in the documentary?
Was he? He might be somewhere. He's got to be somewhere. He's somewhere in there. He's somewhere in there.
Okay, so Mango Man, you start. What are we looking at? It's
Look
enough
at this.
food for
This is
400
beautiful.
people here. What is it?
So we have some lemon pepper wings right here. This is some Haitian spaghetti.
Haitian spaghetti.
Sweet chili wings.
Sweet
mac
chili
and
wings
cheese.
and mac and cheese.
Haitian spaghetti. Describe it. What does that? What does that mean?
So
it's beautiful, by the way. Beautiful
it's a
colors.
tradition spaghetti that we make from Haiti. We usually have it for breakfast, lunch, dinner. So it has sausage, cut up peppers and onions, some spaghetti.
It's gorgeous.
And we just make our nice Haitian seasoning épice that goes into it.
So when you're doing that, they call you Spaghetti Man. I assume. Is that I'm sorry, I can't get
They
over
still
this.
call me Mango.
Just don't call me Mango. So tell us one more time. A week from Sunday, tell us where, when, all that sort of stuff, Manny.
So Sunday, August 27th, we're at Green Rose Heritage Park in Cambridge. It's 155 Harvard Street. It's going to be a vibe, man. The grills are going to be out.
Free.
It's free. Once again, it's free. A lot of food. Mango's coming. I'm coming. I don't know how many chefs come in restaurants, but
20 plus.
20,
So people are just donating their time and their food and their whole. This is going to be a
so
donating
the event is free.
Yep.
We give a lot of free food out, but I also allow people, the entrepreneurs, to make their money too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Some chefs went home real nice last year. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be the same thing. You know what I mean?
Can you do me a favor? Could you hold up that Haitian spaghetti to the camera?
Yeah, that's right. So
it
people can see
is
it.
beautiful. Just hold it up at an angle.
That's art right there.
That is.
Yeah,
It
see,
is
look at
art.
that.
It is
Look at that.
totally beautiful.
And that's the other thing about food, man. Plating and presentation and stuff like that. People want their stuff to look good. You know what I mean? So and taste good. So
looks beautiful. Everything looks.
No, you guys
beautiful.
got to taste this, man.
Believe me, we're tasting it. You don't have to tell
Do you
me.
want to taste it now, Jim, so you can get a quick review?
We don't have a plate or anything.
Yes, we
Of
do.
course,
We're ready.
Let me just try this.
Oh my
spaghetti
God!
before you go.
Look at this.
I have a fork.
Oh, I'm
We
so.
have forks too.
You do? I have my own fork. I'm ready for this. Good.
Look at this. We get containers,
can you put
so we
a
can
little
take
spaghetti
some
in
I'll
home.
make her plate. You make her plate.
You know what this means? I won't have to cook for dinner tonight.
You want
yeah.
us to cook for
anything
like a month.
That's right. This is very exciting. I think you should take a bit of it right now.
Now, what's
Jim.
happening, if you're not watching on YouTube or Facebook, is Mango, as I'm now calling him because we're very close friends, is putting some Haitian. That's plenty. Let me just check it out. He's put some Haitian spaghetti in this thing. He's handing it to me.
I'm giving her a sampler right now.
Thank you
You're
very
doing
much.
this. Thank you. And right, Manny is preparing some macaroni and cheese and some wings and some whatever for Marjorie.
Yeah, I've got my fork already because I knew you guys were coming.
That is absolutely fabulous. That is. Who made that?
I did.
You did? Did you really? Did you
sure
really?
did.
It's fabulous.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mango. It's
So
unbelievable.
people can go wild at this event. They can just
Like
eat all
us,
this
right?
great.
Yeah.
They can eat all this great food and have a wonderful
Really
time.
good community thing. Do it August 27th, Green Rose Heritage Park. I think is it 155
Thank you. Thank you.
Harvard Street, Manny? Yes.
Yeah,
on
155 Harvard Street, Cambridge.
12 to 6.
12 to 6 p.m. We say 6 p.m. because we know people are going to
gonna
stay
go
around.
till it
till
goes.
Oh my God, the mac and cheese.
Gentlemen, it's
I'm
great
not
to
supposed
see
to
you
eat
both.
talk with my mouth full on the radio, but I'm making sure.
Next time, bring a couple of mangoes. will you,
No
Mango?
problem.
We're
Okay.
counting on you.
Hopefully it's mango season.
I hope
That's
it
right.
is. It's great to see you
What,
both.
mango season, by the way,
Congratulations.
what is mango season? Summertime now, right?
Yeah, from March up until September.
March and September. Okay, a whole bunch of
We'll have
time.
them back in September.
Okay.
Thanks.
We've been
Take
speaking
care
with
of you
Emmanuel
too.
Manny Mervo, the brains behind
This is
Everybody Gotta
fabulous.
Eat, plus Mango Man Swerve. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank
all
you.
this food. I really appreciate this. If you are interested in donating food, backpacks, bicycles for the August 27th event, email eat@everybodygotta.com. That's eat@everybodygotta.com, as in everybody gotta eat, right?
Yep.
Other
Thanks,
details
Tom.
can be found at everybodygotta.com or mangomanswerve.com. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
guys
in.
for having us.
And thank you very much for the delicious
care,
lunch.
gentlemen.
For food, call us anytime. We got you.
It's a deal.
And good luck with everything. I hope it's a great event.
Nah,
See you
thank
then.
you.
Coming
Take
up,
care, gentlemen.
CNN's John King joins us on Zoom. Nothing much in the news to discuss with him today, of course. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
I'm eating Haitian spaghetti, so you got to bear with me for
I'll
that.
say, you want me to
How
talk?
great? No, I can do it. How great was that?
It was incredible.
Incredible. In any case, welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBHnews, youtube.com/GBHnews. Friday, we're here at the library again with the Attorney General. Andrea Campbell is here for an hour of Ask the Attorney General. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's John King. I don't think he can cook. I don't know. Chief National Correspondent behind the new... Actually, he is always the host of that great Men Who Cook project.
That's right,
out
in
of
Dorchester.
the Codman Square. Right.
Yeah.
It's fabulous stuff. In any case, behind the new reporting project all over the map with John King. John, it's great to see you.
I am starving. Thanks for that last segment.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Incredible food. But you know, I have really been enjoying your talking with voters,
too.
John, because I think you're out there in Iowa and talking to people that's, you know, very nice people, good people, regular Jane and Joes, and their view of the world is like 180 from what my view of the world is, and but they're reasonable people, and a lot of them are big Trump people, despite all.
It's fascinating. We know this, right? We hear about this. We read about this. As someone who's been in the studio, mostly traveling just a little bit in the last couple of campaigns, revealing to me, Jim and Marjorie, just to that point, you know, there are a lot of Democrats who say, why do you even talk to Trump people? Or they think they're stupid or they're morons, deplorables, you know, it's the Hillary Clinton term from long ago, about these people who believe different things. You know, they're not uneducated. They're critical in their communities. Most of the people one of the friends and families I sat down with, you know, that one business employs 80, another business employs 15, and it's growing. They raise money for the Girl Scouts. They're churchgoers. You know, they're anchors in these small Midwestern communities that have been devastated by the manufacturing decline, globalization over the past 25 years. And they're good people. They're honest people. They're great Americans. They are the people, forgive me, who make America great, who actually make America great. And they have been in the tunnel. Predates Trump. They've been in the Fox and other right-wing tunnels for so long that's all they hear. And then Trump, as I've said before, puts everything on steroids. And so you're in these conversations where, you know, they think they don't trust me. They don't trust CNN. They don't trust the mainstream media. They don't trust banks. They don't trust the federal government. And so I'm trying to start a conversation with them, just mainly to try to understand how we got here better. You know, it's not a question of I'm right, they're wrong. At least I hope they don't view it that way. It's just to try to figure out, wow, this is, when you see it in person around really great, wonderful people, you have an hour-long conversation with somebody and like 10 minutes of it is parallel universe.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is fantastic. And so I'm trying to understand how we got here. And I'm trying to understand how they make their political decisions, because they're not operating the way my brain works. And that doesn't, you know, again, they're good people. So for me, it's a learning project and a listening project, and I hope it gets us somewhere.
You know, John, I know it's anecdotal, but I've enjoyed your work there as much as Marjorie has. I think it's been great. You said a second ago, you want to learn how we got here. I understand how we got here. Marjorie's pretty good at talking about the populist pitch that Trump did in 2016. That I understand. I don't understand how we're staying here. Meaning, I don't understand how, unless it is Fox News all the time, and I know for some people it is, and you have no idea what's going on. Those who do know, when they hear about now the fourth set of charges, he's my man, even though, I don't know if they say these, even though he attempted to overthrow the elected government of the United States. What's that about?
Some of it's about personal loyalty. Some of it's, like we said, you know, if you're in the fight, you don't have time to sit down and actually think things through. And Trump keeps people in the fight. I would say that, again, this distrust that has been fed. Look, if you look at, you know, a certain network and some of its copycats that have grown up in recent years, Donald Trump gets indicted. Their entire prime time is about Hunter Biden. I'm not here to excuse Hunter Biden. I think Hunter Biden deserves scrutiny and oversight. I just don't think anything what we know is anywhere near the scale of saying trying to steal a country, which is what Donald Trump did on January 6th and after the 2020 election. But it's just really hard to break through here. I will say this. There's no question. Trump is the overwhelming favorite. In Iowa, his support is really strong. Even among some Trump people, even as they defend him, you get a little bit, just a little bit of a worry, can he win? Is there maybe a little something here? Maybe it's not all true, but maybe there's something here. So we're early in the process, 5 months till Iowa votes, long way off to next November. Trump is the overwhelming favorite. Don't take anything I say to diminish that at all. I think he'd be incredibly hard to beat for the Republican nomination. But you do pick up, there are some loyal Trump voters who say, I still love him. I don't think he can win. They're already looking for somebody else. And then you have some Trump people, couldn't give you a percentage because I'm just starting this project, who back here, they defend him, and then they'll ask me, do you think he can win? Or, when are these trials? Is he going to be on trial in the middle of the campaign? So for me, the listening part is interesting. As I go back next month and the week after that, and after these two debates that are coming up, starting next week, just to see if that changes at all, right? Do they spend more time on the doubts and less time on the loyalty? I think that's sort of the challenge going forward.
Speaking of debate, if you were a betting human, does Donald Trump show up?
So I'm not supposed to be a betting human, right? And what I do for a living. So this is John King from Dorchester, not John King from CNN. I think he shows up for one of them. Is it the first or the second? He doesn't like the venue for the second one because it's the Reagan Library, and he has a years-long feud with the people who run the Reagan Library. However, the second one is also being hosted by his biggest fans at Fox Business. And so I think that's the calculation. My guess is he'll show up at one. That's a bet. And I do think, every day that he just got indicted for the fourth time yesterday. Think about that. The four-time indicted former president of the United States. When I started in this business, and not even all that long ago, that in and of itself would be disqualifying, even if he's innocent, if he's innocent of everything. The party would just say, we can't deal with this, clear all this up and run again down the road somewhere. But we don't live in that world anymore. So I'm going to bet he shows up at one to try to have the cement dry around his big lead. But you could argue that either way. Also, if anyone up there on that stage goes after him, it might have an airing of all of this. Right now, most of the leading candidates have been very reluctant. If you want to call Chris Christie, I wouldn't call him a leading candidate in the polls. Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson are the two going full bore at Trump over this stuff. But even Chris Christie today said he thought the Georgia case was like too much, piling on.
So here's what I do wonder, though, about DeSantis and the other Republicans that are running, with the exception, as you say, of Asa Hutchinson and Chris Christie. When you're so far behind, it seems maybe a change in strategy is in order, because I'm not sure how you're going to get the votes of MAGA people unless Trump is in jail before the election, which I don't think is going to happen, when you are not differentiating yourself or not criticizing him for what he's done. It does seem an odd strategy. I know DeSantis has got rid of his campaign manager and he's trying to reorganize his campaign, but it does seem odd, the thinking. You know what I mean?
I get the point that if you're struggling, you should be sitting down every day saying, even if you think you're selling a good product, your candidate, and you're the candidate or the staff, and you're struggling, you have to sit down every day and say, okay, why aren't we breaking through? Do we have to communicate differently? Do we need to change our approach on certain issues? And Trump is the biggest issue, how you handle that. So far, there's no evidence that they're going to go after him, like him, saying he is corrupt. He should not be there. You do hear from DeSantis a little bit of, it's too distracting. Can we win? Is that enough to peel off Trump people? Obviously, if you look at the polling, not yet. So that's why I do think, back to Jim's question, if Donald Trump is on that stage or not, is that the moment? Is next week the moment with a bigger audience that one or two or more of them decide, okay, I'm going to get a little bit more direct here? It's hosted by Fox News, so we have no idea what the questions will be. But do the hosts of the debate, the moderators of the debate, try to lead them in a way to draw those contrasts, or do they try to steer away from it? So there are a number of questions to this. But if you're going to make a pivot, there's your opportunity right there next Wednesday. So we'll see if it happens.
John, I was going to ask you about the next quarterback of the Patriots, Malik Cunningham, but we'll save that for another week. Returning to what you said a minute ago, how hard is it for you to break through and have a legit, I consider you to be one of the fairest journalists I've ever met. And I think most people who know you and know your work feel the same way. But how hard is it for you to get through the barrier of the hated CNN when you're dealing with some of the Republicans who bring signs to rallies, essentially urging you all to be hanged at dawn? How do you deal with that?
There are some people we've reached out to who have either not responded at all or said they don't want to participate because of that. I then email them back saying, look, can I just come, buy you a beer or a cup of coffee and sit down and just listen to you? Just listen. I'm not going to argue with you. I just want to listen to you. With the biggest group I sat down with in Iowa, all of them were all the Republicans we interviewed were somewhat skeptical of CNN. Some completely. And so back to the question of how we got here, Jim, I know where we are at the moment, but so what I always ask myself is, I let them air it out. Who at CNN don't you like? Can you give me a specific example? When did this happen? To see if they have good specifics. And we go back and forth sometime. They think there's just, big liberal media bias. And I argue that I do sometimes see what I call a coastal elitist bias in all media because it's in New York or it's in Los Angeles or it's in Washington, D.C. But most of all, Jim, they feel forgotten. They feel ignored. They don't think that they thank me for coming, even as they criticize CNN. They say, we really appreciate your coming. There's this part of America that feels like, as in all this globalization and turmoil and manufacturing upheaval and everything else, migration issues, immigration issues, everything else, that nobody comes to see them. Nobody comes to ask their questions. So part of my challenge here, part of what I hope to learn here is, if I think I'm being fair, and I do think I'm being fair, I try every day to be fair, am I not using the right language? Do I need to come at the issue from a different perspective? Tell the story, same information, tell the story differently to reach them. That's part of the listening for me. Like, how did I lose them? How did we lose them? So let's try to get them back by having a respectful conversation, and maybe we learn to talk to each other a little better.
And
nobody better for the job, I should say, John King. I know Marjorie agrees.
Just tell us again, how are you going to do this? I know you were in Iowa. And is it different spots around the country as primaries happen, or how are you going to work this out?
So it's a long project. We have 15 months until the November election next year. So what Republicans first, right? Can Trump be beat? That is the one single biggest question in American politics right now. Can Trump be beat, or will he be the nominee? So we have an Iowa group, and we're working right now on, do we need New Hampshire or South Carolina? Nevada just moved up its state. Do we want to go out there? Pick 2 or 3. You don't want to overextend yourself, because you want to keep coming back to really good people so that you understand them better, right? So you form several small groups and then really get to know them over the next 5-6 months as Republicans make their choice. And then pivot to the general election, which will be, part of that is swing states, the suburbs in swing states, the key counties in swing states. And those states, that's your Wisconsin, your Pennsylvania, your Georgia, your Arizona, probably your Nevada, the 5 or 6 states that are going to decide the election in the end, and then build groups there. Some of that will be, let's say you have a group of black voters outside of Milwaukee or in Milwaukee, right? Are Democrats going to be excited for Joe Biden and turn out, or does turnout drop a little bit?
Okay.
The Latino conversation. Republicans have made pretty good gains among Latino voters in the last several election cycles, including midterm cycles. So is it Arizona or Nevada? You find a group there to see how they go back and forth. Find people who voted for Donald Trump and then voted for Joe Biden. The ones we have found so far say they wish neither one of them would be the candidate next November. So where do they go? Where do they go? If you voted once for Trump and then said, I can't do this again, and voted for Biden, almost a hold your nose vote, but to get rid of Trump, what happens there? So we're going to build these groups, hopefully the right people in the right places as we move into the general election. So that's months down the road a little bit, but the first challenge is the Republicans. So that's what we'll focus on for the next couple months.
We'll be watching. Great work, John. Great to speak to you.
Thank you
so much
very
for your
much.
time.
Now I'm going to go eat. Thank you very much.
See you, John
We've been
King.
speaking with CNN's John King, Chief National Correspondent behind the new reporting project, All Over the Map with John King. Okay, coming up, we're opening the lines to ask you, what deli meat would you be most likely to trip over and then file a lawsuit? A woman in New Hampshire found out just how greasy prosciutto really is, and she's suing Italy Boston after slipping on the sliced meat. We're going to open the lines to discuss this American tragedy with you. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. Unfortunately, this is our favorite story of the day, and time is short, so get in on it right away at 877-301-8970. At the entrance to Italy, right down the street here on Boylston Street, a sign boasts Italian Paradise is one flight up. Well, one woman had a little trouble reaching Paradise, apparently after allegedly slipping on a slice of prosciutto last year. She's now suing Italy, I think, for $50,000. Due to the alleged negligence, the lawsuit states New Hampshire resident Alice Cohen not only injured her ankle, she experienced a loss of enjoyment of life and great pain and suffering. Our producer is actively trying to avoid plagiarizing the comments section of the Globe story while writing the segment, so at the risk of hamming this up too much, we're opening the lines to ask you, which slice meat would cause you to meet your maker? Gabagool, a nice wet olive loaf, perhaps you're a vegan, you'd opt for a more traditional banana peel, and also, do you assume the risk when you get a free sample, which this was.
Right.
It was a free sample of prosciutto, and apparently, and by the way, we feel very bad for Alice Cohen. If this is all true, she fractured a bone or some such thing. 877-301-8970. We want you to share with us your out-of-the-ordinary sliced meat experiences, not unlike Miss Cohen from New Hampshire. You buying her story?
Well, I'm buying her story. I don't know that you need to sue. I mean, I feel bad for her.
She broke her
ankle,
leg
but,
or something.
You know, I think, as you point out, Jim, you're taking your life in your hands. You're getting near a hot bar. I mean, people are taking food and they're dropping it on the ground
slippery.
all around you, and they are indeed very slippery. Everything with a little oil on it. And when you look at the comment section,
share some if you would.
Well, I think that this is it's one of them. James says this is the only time I've ever seen more than 100 comments. We all agree. It's refreshing to find something that we all agree on, and mostly they're just making fun of prosciutto, you know, and they're not very, they're not all that sympathetic to her lawsuit. Yes. Well, on this one says on the security tape it showed her picking up the piece and eating it, disregarding the 5-second rule, Jim. Yeah, and then
want to explain what the 5-second rule is for people who do not know?
That's the idea. If you drop food on the floor and it takes you more than 5 seconds to pick it up, you should not eat it, but if you can pick it up before 5 seconds,
go for it.
Right, but
Just
it
pop
doesn't always work with it. Might
slice of bologna, it's a problem.
Yeah, slice of bologna, it's a problem. You pick up the things on the floor.
Hard salami, it's okay.
Yeah, but you know, a lot of people are saying that really that she's lucky she didn't step on a piece of mortadella because that's much more slippery than prosciutto, and she.
Don't you think the fat content is the issue in terms of slipperiness?
I don't know. I thought it might be the shininess. No, the shininess is not a big factor.
877-301. 8970.
For the prices that Italy charges, she could sue for $1 million instead of $50,000. It's a little pricey out there in Italy, but it's very nice. It's the Prudential. You can walk around. You can buy all this, obviously Italy, Italian sauces, pasta, all these wines, olive oils.
We should also say what's in the cold cut department, which is actually really convenient. It's really good. They have a lawyer's stand. You could just. You could just hire a lawyer for a slip and fall, as these are called.
Yeah.
877-301-8970 is the number. In all seriousness, I have no idea if this happened. If it did happen, $50,000 is like nothing. If you break your ankle because they dropped a piece of prosciutto and didn't pick it up and you slipped on it, isn't that their responsibility, yes or no?
Well, I don't know. I think it would depend on how long the piece of prosciutto was there, and you had to bring all the witnesses into court and find out, exactly the circumstances of this, as I said before, this American tragedy. Here's some more of the comments. Iggy says, Italy is known to be ham-handed in the way they mete out delicacies.
Got it. A lot of puns there. Let's go to John in the car. We're talking prosciutto slips and falls. Hello there, John. What's up?
My question is, did she hurt the front of herself or the back of herself? If it's the front, it's a trip, which would make it her own fault. If it's the back, it would be a slip, which would make it the prosciutto's fault.
How long have you been a lawyer, John?
Well, actually, I've never been a lawyer, Jim, but in my past career, I did go to MIT Lincoln Labs and have to prove that scientifically, and they ended up having to strip 1 million square feet of flooring.
Wow!
And the lady lost.
They did?
Here I am, honest to God, here I am, the janitorial supply salesman with the head of MIT Lincoln Labs, their insurance company, her lawyers, her insurance company, and they're telling me they want to strip. I'm just listening. They want to strip the floor, and I have to inform them that not only is a stripped floor, more likely to have a lower coefficient of drag, so you'll fall, than a floor with floor finish on it. But also because it was all asbestos tile, then they would really have a problem rather than just the fall.
I can't believe you actually know what you're talking about. This is a shock. John, that was excellent.
Jim,
what?
I handled a lot of specialty cleaning, everything from that to tile floors and how to maintain marble to, I'll just say, I think you'll understand the OSHA 29 rules and regulations for nursing homes with the deceased.
Let me just tell you, John, next time we have an instance where somebody slips on a cold cut, we're going to give you a call. John, that was excellent. Thank you very much for your call. 877-301-8970. That was impressive, wasn't it?
That was very, very impressive.
Look at this, by the way. Jamie is just, again, on AI, ChatGPT. That's
there
me
you are, Jim.
at Italy.
You're looking good.
It actually looks, I mean, it does look a tad like me, a little better than I'm looking at the particular moment, but it does look a decent amount like me. Alan in a car, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about the great prosciutto incident over at Italy. Hello there, Alan.
Hi there. Yeah, I heard about that. Now, first disclosure, I'm not a lawyer.
You're not? Okay, fine.
But, no. But, the thing that I just heard is kind of hard for me to believe because let's say somebody was blind or was using a dog, because he was blind or just was physically incapable of having the sight or control to navigate the stairs.
Yeah.
It's the obligation of every property owner, whether it's residential or commercial, to maintain a safe walkway.
Yeah.
And that's why we have liability insurance. Nobody likes to buy liability insurance, but that's why we have it.
So so which side are you on? Are you on Ms. Cohen's side, it sounds like?
I'm just on the side of that the property owner is at fault. It's almost like a rear end collision.
I agree. If it happened, I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's the obligation of the property owner to hold a policy to make sure that the customer's protected and they're protected. And that's just the way it is.
Got it. Thank you, Alan. Thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
This couple is from New Hampshire.
They are.
So a texter says, if she wins, they can change the New Hampshire license plate to eat free and sue.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I like that one.
Not that funny, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Well, there are a lot of people that looked up this person, and they have all the information on where they live up in Lakewood and Pisaki. I don't think we need to mention all that. Oops.
Do you think the people who work at the deli counter, Marjorie,
what?
Should the people who work at the deli counter wear body cameras? Do you think that would be the solution for the...
No, I think that I can't believe she's suing. I mean,
why? What are you, crazy? If you slipped on a piece of prosciutto at a restaurant kind of thing and you injured yourself badly, her medical expenses were allegedly $7,500. Then there's pain and suffering. You wouldn't sue the place?
I don't think I would. Maybe there's something wrong with me. And we're getting a lot of baloney jokes. You know what I mean?
There's nothing like
the
good
slip
baloney
and
joke.
fall story sounds like a bunch of baloney.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Several people have said the same things. Introverts don't have to worry about deadly bruschetta, but I've always said I'm most likely to die by tripping over my dog and choking on a spoonful of ice cream.
Here's an anonymous texter said, I thought it takes years for processed pork products to kill you, which didn't kill her, Ms. Cohen.
So you would sue if you slipped on some...
I would, if I don't want to put me in the conversation. Yeah. If somebody that I cared about slipped on a slice of prosciutto and was badly injured, I would approach the business and say there should be some compensation, yes. And so would you. You're not that nice. I mean, you're nice.
No,
you're not that nice. If you're injured because of the negligence of the prosciutto person, you'd do something, right?
I guess, but you think about it, you're going to be the plaintiff in a trial involving your slipping on a piece of prosciutto and being up there in the courtroom.
Having testified.
And I don't know. I don't know, Jim.
877-301-8970. What's your take on this prosciutto caper over there? By the way, it took her like 8 months or so, many months to sue. This happened last year, right? What do you make of that?
This reminds someone of the McDonald's coffee spill on someone's legs.
That was a grandmother.
Yeah, she said she got burned. Apparently, she did get burned pretty badly by the really hot coffee. Yeah, that's right.
She did. I remember that well. That was like 15 years ago or something. Could you look up how much money did that grandmother get? I think she got a lot of money.
I don't know. It was McDonald's.
It was McDonald's.
It was Donald.
Because the coffee is piping hot kind of thing.
Exactly. It's very hot coffee. In high school, I slipped on someone's half-eaten ham sandwich in the hallway and fell in front of my prom date.
Oh, that's
I
bad.
was mortified.
What'd they sue for?
They did not sue.
How do you know that?
They didn't it's a texter. I don't really know. But I don't think, would you sue?
I just said to you what I do.
You would do it?
I would approach the business owner and say, somebody I care about broke their ankle. What did she break her ankle?
Broke her ankle.
There's got to be some
She
compensation.
fractured her ankle after slipping on a piece of prosciutto, and she has filed a negligence lawsuit against the Italian eatery, alleging the store failed to create a safe environment for her and its customers. It's a tough one.
Wait a second. Listen to the McDonald's woman. This is 30 years ago, 29 years ago. They awarded the woman $160,000 in compensatory damages. That was for her burnt crotch. And $2.7 million, that was, again, 30 years ago, for punitive damages, the equivalent of 2 days, apparently, of McDonald's coffee sales. So what do you think of that?
I think that that's a much bigger case because they handed her this coffee that was scalding hot, and she spilled it. I mean, I think that's different than falling on
Why is it different? If you left a piece of prosciutto on the ground and you slipped on it, why is that any different?
Well, she approached an area of the store where food samples were being handed out to customers. Then she slipped and fell on a piece of prosciutto. Are they negligent? I mean, how fast do they have to pick up the prosciutto that falls? I mean, you spend half your life at the hot bar.
I do.
Right? Don't things fall on the floor all the time from
They
the
do,
hot
and
bar?
I usually pick them up and pop them right in.
Yeah, I mean, but if you slipped on something there, I don't think
You don't assume liability. It's not my store. Let's go to Patrick in the car. Patrick, we're talking about the prosciutto caper right down the street from us at Italy. Hey there, Patrick.
Hey, I actually have an answer for you on that McDonald's hot coffee
What is it?
suit. It's actually the fact that I don't have the exact dollar figure you were asking about, but she was actually entirely right. She simply wanted McDonald's to cover the medical costs, and it actually uncovered that McDonald's had been chronically ultra heating the coffee
I remember that.
to well
I do.
beyond scalding temperatures.
Yeah, much better case.
And that's why they paid.
She just.
That's why they had to pay the almost $3 million in punitive damages.
Yeah, and the thing is, because punitive damages can be capped, she didn't get anywhere near the $3 million.
Oh, I didn't know
She just
that.
wanted I think it was $5,000 in medical bills, and they offered her $1.
So there you go. She had a good,
There you
she had a
go,
good
watch.
case. I think that, did this
Patrick, that was an excellent call. Thank you.
Copley is seeking upwards of $50,000 with damages. I don't know how much it cost her for
You're
insurance.
a little
to get her-
hostile to this. She paid $7,500 for her medical care, and the rest is punitive damages. That
Here's some
sounds reasonable.
surreptitiously recorded sound of our executive producer, Jay Bologna, I would add,
We know
talking
that.
about this story
It's really nice,
this morning.
Gabriel says we down here for the gabagool. The gabagool. Gabagool.
That's
over here. Gabagool. A forward ham, salami, gabagool.
Let's get back to that gabagool.
Gabagool.
Okay, Sopranos, that's fine. That's a little ethnic stereotyping, I should say.
It's okay. My
Thank
children
goodness.
are all Italian.
They are? Oh, that's
I was
right. They
married
sort
to an
of are
Italian.
half.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. Half Italian.
Liliana in Fall River, you have 1 minute. What's up?
Okay, you are putting me over the edge today.
Why?
With the story of the prosciutto.
Yeah.
I'm almost 80 years old.
Yeah.
I eat prosciutto all the time. I have never slipped on a prosciutto.
Well,
There you go.
you'd be a great
You'd be a
witness for
good
the
witness.
defense.
Yeah. What do you make of this, Liliana? You think she's exaggerating and making this up?
Oh, please. First of all, prosciutto is a cured meat, and it does not have the greasy shine.
That's a very good point,
that
actually.
mortadella has.
Exactly.
Or Coca-Cola.
Very good
Okay?
point. Yeah, we got
Sorry. You serve it with the melon. You
Yeah.
don't have grease on the
No,
melon.
you don't. That's
you
true.
serve with figs, and you don't have that grease.
Now,
So
Liliana,
I
would
don't
you be
know.
willing to testify as an expert witness for the defense if you're called?
Absolutely.
I knew you would.
I cannot stand such stupid women that have no idea what Italian food is and Italian customs and all that. I just
Liliana, you're the best caller in like a month. You got to call us
Yeah.
again soon. That was fabulous. Thank you for
Well, I
calling
think she
in.
made a great point. You know,
She did.
it's not mortadella.
No, it's not
prosciutto.
mortadella. What's mortadella? You even know what mortadella is?
It's more slippery.
You have no idea what
It's
it is.
shiny and slippery.
Describe it.
It's shiny and slippery.
Okay, fine. In other words, you have no idea.
And it's pink.
Liliana
I guess you'd
is
say
the
it's pink.
star
Or
of
would
the
you say it's
show.
brown?
Brown.
Pinkish
Red,
brown.
reddish.
Okay, it's reddish
We're
brown,
done,
whatever
luckily.
it is. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Liliana's going to be co-hosting tomorrow instead of Marjorie,
Of Boston
by the way.
Public
Good.
Radio. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our
She
podcast.
was
We have a new
good.
short podcast, a half-hour podcast, which is a shortened version.
Shorter.
And I think it's better.
Okay.
Tune in tomorrow for NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, Harvard's national security expert Juliet Kayyem, naturalist Cy Montgomery, who talks all about animals to us, and she's very soothing to listen to. The Innocence Project's Barry Scheck on the murder conviction and exoneration of a woman from Texas, and shows how we don't do what we should be doing here in Massachusetts.
17 years for killing her kid, and she didn't do it.
She didn't do it. That's
Didn't do
right.
it.
Can you imagine that?
I can't.
Plus, 2 people behind a petition to have the FCC remove a Fox affiliate's broadcast license. Former Fox exec Preston Padden and conservative thinker William Crystal.
Bill Crystal.
Yes, I'm very excited about this,
Bill
Jim.
Crystal.
The Bill Crystal,
Should be
that's
great.
right. He's a big deal Republican. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John
There's the
Claw
mortadella
Parker.
on your screen.
Oh, there's some mortadella. Oh, thank you very much. There it is. It's very
How
slippery.
great
I
does
can
that
tell
look?
from here.
Are those
very
little
slippery.
pistachios, the little green? Oh, they're fabulous.
I think they're little cheese
Good
things.
for you.
This
No,
is
it's
little-
pistachios.
They're fat. Oh, God,
No,
it's
the,
fat.
obviously the white is fat.
I thought it was cheese.
You ever have a salami
Shows what I
sandwich
know.
or not?
Not often.
Apparently
Our
not.
engineer is John the Claw
Yeah,
Parker,
he
and our
is.
executive producer who's showing us all these pictures of his Italian cold cuts is
amazing.
Jamie Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL team, Angelica Marrero, Evelyn Brito, Brad Lewis, and Sandra Lopez-Burke. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you can tune in tomorrow. Have a great day.